Good morning, gentlemen. Akil, Mr. Linda,
Hey Zama, good morning. How are you?
I'm okay. Akil, how are you?
I'm good, thank you. Linda is coming through.
Is he Fireflies?
No, no, that's me.
Fireflies is you.
Yeah, Fireflies is my AI note taker.
Oh,
Yeah, but you're welcome to remove it if you want. It's an automatic thing.
nah, it's fine, Akili. It's fine, my brother.
Okay, we start shortly. We get waiting for Linda to come in.
He'll be doing the presentation today.
Yes, Linda is handling today's presentation.
Okay, no, thanks, Akil, man. Let's just wait for him. I think it's still time. Now it's 8 o'clock.
Yes, yes. So when you start your segment, after your segment, we will start to go.
Okay, now let's just wait for them. I think now we have 36 in already.
Yeah, we got numbers climbing. I hope they know that it's for both papers, they need to join both days. It's not like one day's paper one, one day's paper two. Although the focus is maybe paper two today, but we're covering both papers. So,
Now, I told them that because I've been talking to the candidates throughout the week.
oh, fantastic, fantastic. I know we
Mm.
did tell them last week. I know on the link you sent out, you only said dates. You didn't say which paper we're focusing on, but sometimes assumptions happen. But anyway, I'm very happy that we see the numbers climbing now. Now we are plotting.
Yeah, see, we're on 40 now. I've been checking your podcast there, actually. The numbers are good.
What podcast, Zama? What you talking about?
One of your podcasts, I was from last week. Uh, I went and checked your YouTube page. There was one podcast you were hosting last. I'm not sure what day was it, but it was just a recording. I went on just to check. I saw the numbers there.
Zama, sorry, man. I was listening to you there. Linda says that he is inside, but he is not able to speak.
Let me check what's happening. Okay.
Oh,
Mr.
thank
Linda,
you.
are you
Thank you
fine
very
now?
much, Zama. I'm in now. What happened? Was I not admitted?
The thing is, I have to make you a panelist, and I thought
Oh,
Immaculate
yes,
already
yes.
did it.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. No problem. Thank you very much. How are you,
Okay.
gentlemen?
How are you? How are you, Mr. Felix?
I'm very well, thanks.
I'm good. I'm good. Zama was suggesting that the numbers are climbing, but we only started climbing by 10 minutes.
Yeah,
So now I think we've got to wait for a few more, Linda.
not a problem. Not a problem.
Yeah. Yeah, because now I think we are on 52. We can just maybe give it maybe 5 minutes and see maybe if we
Yes, yes.
reach 100 then.
Yeah, yeah.
I think so. Peeps, you call your friends, call your family, tell them to join. Where are they? Zama, just talking about a podcast. Zama says our last episode was like a podcast. Linda, he says that you must monetize
Oh,
it now. You must start your own channel. This
yeah.
is what he said.
No, no, we must, eh?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yes,
Yeah,
yes.
because I've been getting a feedback from of the last presentation we had last week. The
Mm.
candidates, I think they were happy for they're saying it was insightful. The like no, I got good feedback.
How's the
Okay.
candidate? Candidates, you're getting brownie points here because Zama is here with you all. He's making you look good, eh? So now he's like, oh, if there's any special information we know, now we must give it to them, hey? Because they're trying to flatter us, they're trying to butter us up. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, 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 yeah.
Yeah, ooh,
The
strategies.
feedback was high last week.
Zama, what did they tell you? Did they tell you they're all gonna make your life easier now? You must just say nice things. They'll stop sending you so many emails about the exam. Just say nice things. Uh, I see we have quite a few people here that are still coming through, but we can see Alicia Horn, Anne-Marie Groenewald, Andre Olwachen, Aaron Wood. Oh, names that I know, names I don't know. We actually going to in this morning. Linda and I were discussing last night that we need to have the voices of these groups coming through. So I don't know, maybe in the meanwhile, while we're waiting for these people to come through, if there's any 3 people that will volunteer to be engaging with us today, that you can maybe just put your hand up or put your name in the comment section or in the question section so that we can, Zama can unmute you when it's time to talk. Just 3 people we're looking for. Maybe the people I mentioned, because you have the names on the screen, but maybe anyone else. Hey, Linda, maybe you have anyone you know here, Linda, you want to choose. You're like, hey, this one looks like he's my.
Let me just check. I think, people can just volunteer, Akil,
Yeah, I think.
to, okay.
I think so. Let's have this, guys. Volunteers, peeps, volunteers to engage with. The important part of this engagement, just so you maybe get the bigger picture, is if we don't understand where you are with the exam, we don't know how to best advise you. Nina and I do
Yeah,
not know
yeah.
what is in the papers, right? But we definitely know more or less the way that the papers are structured and set up and the direction examiners are coming from, because Linda and I were privy to that information at some stage. So we are attempting to help figure out where you are. So if you would like us to help you, then volunteering is a good thing. Otherwise, you'd have to just select someone that's able to talk. We also want people that are able to talk. You don't just want to get people that's unable to do it.
Akil,
Yeah, yeah.
the chat is disabled, so maybe you'll get more volunteers when you enable the chat section.
Who is chatting there? Who's talking to me?
I think isn't that too cheap?
Yes.
Oh, Eugene. How's it? Eugene, you sound like you're wanting to volunteer.
If I have something to add, I'll add it.
Okay, cool, Eugene. Thanks, man. And so can you guys not put your hands up either?
Yeah,
Um, we can do that.
I've just enabled it now. I think everyone can, anyone who would like to say something in the chat box is now enabled.
Oh, fantastic, fantastic. Eugene was a spokesperson, so now Eugene is victim number one. Hey, fantastic, Eugene. You are number one. All right. Then we got Paige says tester, but that tester means you are number 2, Paige. And now we're looking for a third one. One more person. Where's the brave souls? Brave souls. Oh, not yet. Okay, at least we got 2. So the last one maybe will come up somewhere along the way. But Linda, over to you.
Sir.
Do you want to maybe start at this moment, because I see there is 65 people in and the
Yeah.
time is 8:09. Give them maybe a minute, Linda. What you
Yeah.
say?
No, I think perhaps we should start out of courtesy to those that actually joined on time.
Yeah.
Maybe at 10 minutes past. Give it one more
Yeah,
minute, then we start.
yeah, great, Linda. Linda, then it's
Okay,
over to you.
cool, cool. Um, I'm also not able to see my chat box, Zama, but I'm just trying
But
to see on my
I
side.
I can see the chat
Yeah.
box though, so I will tell you,
Really?
Linda.
Okay,
Yeah, no
okay,
problem. Cool.
no problem.
I mean, because I said it for everyone to see,
For
and
everyone, yeah.
yeah,
All right, all right. It's fine, Zama, because we agreed yesterday that Akil will try to handle most of the engagements on the chats on the chats.
yeah,
Yeah. So I think perhaps we should start. I think 8:10.
Just want to mention that there's a few people that are unmuting themselves. Just make sure that you are muted, because now we have
Yeah.
enabled everyone to speak, right? So that when we ask a question, you can respond. But make sure your cameras are off and you're muted. But thanks.
yeah.
Linda, back to you.
Thank you very much, Akil. Good morning, everyone, and thank you for joining this the second workshop. My name is Linda Mampuru. Um, I'm joined by Zama from SACAP as well as Akil. And again, I'd like to just give a shout out to Akil, who gave what I think was a brilliant presentation last week. I think it was indeed very insightful and entertaining at the same time. Yeah. So today's focus, candidates will be on especially paper two, although there might be overlaps with paper one, right? So the formats that myself and Akil agreed on is that I will do the presentation, and then we'll have some comments from Akil himself at the end of the presentation. Then we'll have a session for engagements. Remember what we said last week is that in as much as last week was you are more of spectators, this week we want more engagements, especially for paper two, because that is the more difficult one, even though it's open book, right? And then right at the end, we will have Zama just to explain again how the process for the exams will work, the logistics behind that. So hopefully you'll be able to stay on until then. Otherwise, if you're not fully conversant with the system that SACAP is using, you might have problems. So just in general, I think there was an attempt on the study guide to try and assist candidates in terms of how to approach the paper. And I would still recommend that you go back to that study guide in terms of how to approach it. But we'll go into a little bit more detail in terms of how to best place yourself to deal with the questions, especially for paper two. Just as a small disclaimer, guys. My name is on Zoom is cited as Felix Mampuru. That's actually my second name. So you can use either Linda or Felix. I just want to make it a point that you are not confused as to who you're actually listening to. So thank you very much. But having said all of this, candidates, as I go through the presentation, please feel free to interject, to ask questions, to make comments, because like I said, today we wanted to be a little bit more interactive. And as Achilles said, we also want to gauge as to where your knowledge base stands, so that if there is some room to address any gaps, those can be done prior to the exam. Yeah. So this slide talks to how to approach the exam. First thing, especially with your long scenario questions, they might seem complicated, but the first thing that you need to bear in mind is that do not panic, because remember what we said last week? You guys actually already know more than half of the stuff that is going to be asked. If you had to close your books and it was a closed book exam, you should ordinarily get at the very least 50%. Okay. Second step is to identify the milestones, right? So what does that mean? Try and locate a particular question as to whether it falls within the planning stage or the execution stage. What is planning? So these are words that are used. What I've noticed is that they're used in the private sector quite a lot, where, for instance, the planning is anything up to from stage 1 to stage 4. And then execution is where you've done site establishments and, whatever project is being executed on site. So try and locate those questions, within that entire value chain. Thirdly, try to compartmentalize the questions. If they are long, right? Try and break them up into smaller pieces. You will see with a lot of the questions, there's an allocation of marks to each, right? So that already gives you an indication of how to then place the questions within the entire work stage model, stage 1 to stage 6, right? That will help you a great deal, because if a question is related to stage 1 and you are basing your answer on stage 5 or 6, already you know that you are going in the wrong direction. Then step 4, follow the chronology. If you look at how the questions have been asked previously, I hope that is the case, obviously, with the upcoming exam. Follow the chronology because we will start from the beginning of the process to the end, right? Step 5. I think Aki last week tried to implore everyone to say, in as much as it's an open book exam, the second exam, you need to have the ability to know which document to rely upon in order to help you with your question, right? And the documents that Akil shared with you, he did emphasize that those are some of the more important ones. We will share some more today, right? But the bottom line is our list is not exhaustive. So after this workshop, actually make it your business to go and look for the other documents that you may not have in your possession. Because remember, you are not going to have a chance to go to ChatGPT or AI to answer these questions. Step 6, if a question, for instance, is out of 12, for example, and you don't have a source document, or you don't have the answers yourself, you should be able to, just by applying common sense, at least answer a certain portion of that question. So you could easily get 30, 40%, right? At the very least. So it's important to actually have confidence in your knowledge base at this point to say that you have most of the answers without having to necessarily refer to a source document. And then most importantly, what we're testing here, if we're talking about workplace readiness, it means you must have the ability to synthesize your technical knowledge and mastery with your theoretical knowledge. And we will go into detail when we deal with specific questions in this regard, right? So what we're saying here is that you have actually come full circle. You went to varsity. A lot of what you did was theoretical, right? You would have been taught certain elements of office practice and business. Now, admittedly, you've got some of us who are fairly well experienced, like myself and Akil. But I can tell you one thing, with every project that you come across, you are still going to learn loads of stuff as you go through those projects. Some you might even learn from your peers within the team. But it's important to understand that there's a high level of responsibility placed upon you as an architect, because more so than not, you will be placed in a position where you need to be a principal agent. So you need to have confidence, you need to have leadership skills, trust the information and the knowledge base that you have, right? But also be open-minded enough to learn from your peers. Secondly, it's obviously mandatory that, especially for those of you who have passed your masters, to appreciate the fact that you've had to go through practical experience by working in a firm, right? So that knowledge needs to come through as you deal with, especially paper two. And then there's a certain amount of financial literacy that you would have been taught also in the process. After the exam, if you feel the need to refresh and add to that knowledge base, please do so. That will come in handy. For instance, Akil spoke a lot about having to adjust to circumstances, socio-economic circumstances, in terms of how you run your practice, moving from something that is conventional to unconventional, and how, for instance, AI can come in handy. Note that Akil spent a lot of time talking about AI. It is not going to entirely replace you in terms of how you maneuver out of and you navigate out of certain situations. It's there mainly to enhance what you already know. And then just appreciate that we are in the fourth, sorry for that, I think I stated fifth industrial revolution. Maybe that was prophetic of me, but I think we're in the fourth industrial revolution. Know how to take full advantage of all the tools that are available to you, okay? It'll be very important, especially from a cost point of view when you're dealing with projects and clients. If you look at, for instance, stage one, we spend a lot of time on stage one for clients, and sometimes only to find out that the client does not want to go beyond that. How do you handle stage one, considering the fact that it's the smallest, it has the smallest allocation in terms of fees, right? So how are you able to then use technology and AI to execute that particular stage with the appreciation that it has a high risk, in a sense that you may not be able to go beyond stage one? All right. How can you already do the preliminary costing, which you can give to the client, so that the client already knows at that stage the costs to anticipate going forward? Right. This slide talks to, again, like what I said. Sorry, had to take a drink there. Some of the source documents that you will need to rely upon. And most of these documents, you will see the application thereof at a later stage under what you call it, slide 11 and 12. Again, if you're not conversant with some of these documents, please let us know now so that we can explain what these are about. But first and foremost, one of the most important documents will be your Architectural Professions Act. That's at the top, number 44 of 2000, because ultimately that is the Bible for the work that you're going to do. There's very important elements to this document, because it talks to things like professional fees or fee guidelines. It talks to IDOW. I see with a lot of projects that, especially with say, government projects, there still isn't a full understanding of how to apply IDOW, right? And again, you'll see how we've actually incorporated that element into some of the questions. And then thirdly, IDOW is important for delegations of authority and work. One of the things that you need to understand at the inception of a project is who does what, right? Firstly, you need to understand the scope, number one. And then secondly, not all projects that you execute will you be a principal agent. So again, we'll talk to that element with a later slide. Stats SA is something that's, one can say, falls outside of our profession, but you will see how you will need to be, to some extent reliant on things like some of their publications, like the CPAP manual. We'll go into a little bit more detail into that. And I'm going to touch on this because what I've seen architects do, even with my private sector projects, right, is that they overly rely on QSs to calculate, number one, their fees, to monitor the costing for a project. And that's unfortunately the downfall of other projects. And we'll talk to that in detail at a later stage. You need to have an understanding of the client architect agreement, how to fill that in. What happens, for instance, when you are appointed on a government project, whether it's public works or whatever. Does this still have relevance or not, right? But the client architect agreement is one of the proxy documents that has been crafted and keeps evolving, and it's been crafted by experts within the field, most of which sit within the SIRE practice committee. So it's important to understand that from a contractual point of view, already the work has been done for you, right? In terms of the legal elements. You can deviate from the client architect agreement, but just note that you do it at own risk, because the way that the client architect agreement has been crafted is to protect both the clients and also yourself as a service provider. And in crafting and in filling in the documents, you need to understand the context in which you are operating. So understand the peculiarities of that particular project. Be conversant with the terminology, and also be fully conversant on how to apply the client architect agreement. Then other documents, like the CIDB, general conditions of contract. We'll talk to why this is very important, especially with government-related projects. And then also a lot of you will be, like most of us historically have done, houses. What is the document that applies and is important in that sort of area, which is the NHBRC, and is probably lesser known. And there's an act of parliament that you need to understand in that regard. Just as a short note, the NHBRC has an act and has guidelines and standards whereby if you are actually undertaking a residential project, you need to register that project with the NHBRC. The purpose of this is to ensure that the client is covered in an event that they have a dispute with the contractor or yourself, right? And then there's one of the most important documents, which is published by the SABS, which are your building codes. For example, one of those codes is SANS 10400 Part XA, which I think most of you know by now, which is your fenestration calculations. Then there's another document that is probably less known, which is the Infrastructure Development Act. That will only apply for government projects. Then the one that is also most important is the JBCC. And in most cases, you will have to apply this in your scenario questions. And again, it will be very important as you apply to understand the context, terminology, and application. Right. I'm trying to remove something that's blocking my title here, but here we're dealing with contracting and contracts. Candidates, just to check, are you still following me? Put up a hand or give me a sign somehow that you're following me and that you're hearing me. And if there's any questions so far, please do feel free to ask. I'll give you a few seconds. Are we together?
While you're giving them a few seconds, Linda, I'm going to go back to ask you to go back a slide quickly while they're putting together.
No
Maybe they
problem.
want. So,
No
Linda,
problem.
from all of these source documents, are you telling me that in the experience of a candidate's lifetime, they should have come across maybe not just documents from here, but they should have had some sort of engagement with the literature that these bodies have produced?
Yeah. So I think, Akil, that's a good question because I remember way back when I was also doing my practicals.
Yeah.
Because of the practice or company that you're working in, you may find that some of them, the focus differs, so to speak. For instance, if you're dealing with mostly private sector work, right? There are documents that you may not have come across, like the CIDB document and Infrastructure Development Act, right? Some practices, for instance, you could have been dealing with commercial clients, corporate clients. And so you wouldn't have done like residential projects that are residential in nature, like the NHBRC. So the importance here is to say that if that is the case, you have not been exposed to some of these, make it your business, even after this workshop, to look into some of these documents. Fortunately, we live in the age where you can do a quick Google search or ChatGPT, whatever the case is, right? But like we said, these are not exhaustive. I'm not sure if Akil that answers your question. So candidates may have come across some of these documents or all of these documents, or at the very least, yeah, some of these documents. So please make an effort if you haven't come across some of these to look into those. Having said that, we were just discussing with Akil, I think after last week's workshop. SACAP may, remember this time round, we are not setting the papers, but SACAP may reserve the right to say, okay, after last week, Saturday's presentation and today's presentation, we feel that, especially based on the engagements today, that there might be a need for us to, as SACAP, to tweak the questions, to incorporate some of the elements of last week's presentation and this week's presentation. So just bear that in mind. Akil, I'm not sure if that answers your question.
No, you did answer my question, and it hopefully also answered Mabube's question in the chat where he said, "Can you please provide us with the copies of these?" The idea for all of these, at least for last week and this week's workshop, is research-based activity. So it means for you to understand the subjects better of what we're talking about, you'd have to conduct research, and that research will hopefully put you in better stead to answering the questions in the examination. Just a follow-up on what Linda mentioned. Recall the papers in most cases are already set at least about a month before the examination comes out. That does mean, though, that you, in the feedback that you're giving, potentially have the opportunity, based on where you are and based on the interactions of the presentations, to have the examiners reconsider what they might potentially have in the paper. They won't adjust it greatly for you, but they might say, okay, cool, maybe in the memos, we will now, taking into account everything you said, we will be a bit more lenient in a specific portion. So it's really important that we get the feedback so that it
Yeah.
works to your favor. But Linda, I think let me not
Yes.
hinder you. Back to you.
Yeah, no, thank you very much for that, Akil. I think it needed emphasis. Right. Next slide. Right. Some of the things that you ought to be conversant with by now is contracts. Remember what I said. In the field that we work in, there's millions and millions of documents that you are going to come across. In terms of compliance, the burden that is placed upon you as, in most cases, as a principal agent are very onerous. They are very onerous, and you really need to make it your business to study those so that you are very conversant, because in the absence thereof, you will see, and SACEP will tell you the kinds of things they are dealing with from aggrieved clients, right? And a lot of them relate to contracts and the legal elements of the work that you do. The quality of the work, yes, might be an issue. Apologies for that. But in most cases, I've sat on many years ago, I sat on the investigations committee at SACEP. So I know the kinds of things that people often come across in their day-to-day work as architects. So it's important to understand contracts and the different forms of contracts. And some of those contracts that you'll be dealing with, as I mentioned, is like your JBCC. And we'll talk to at a later stage as to when a JBCC becomes applicable. GCC, which is mainly engineering based for engineering work. Again, we'll talk to when does a GCC become relevant. Please don't confuse the GCC. GCC stands for General Conditions of Contract. And please don't confuse this one with the one used by the Department of Public Works, right? Because the one at the Department of Public Works is more of a generic one that is signed by all professionals, not exclusively for engineers, but it's signed by all professionals within the team, right? Again, we'll talk to where this one becomes applicable and relevant. FIDIC is your preferred contract for international projects. And then you've got an NEC, again, which is mainly engineering based, but by and large is for your more complex projects. So you need to know when to apply all of these. Then also you need to understand the different methods of contracting. And they are lump sum contracts, cost plus contracts, and time and materials contracts. If you're coming across these for the first time, again, please go and do your research. This information is readily available. While I'm on this particular panel and before I move on to the second one, is there anyone that has a question with regards to any of these candidates? I'll again emphasize that Akil did say that if there's at least 3 people to engage with, at the very least, please put up your hand so that we can engage with you.
Yeah,
Otherwise, we won't know, sorry, Akil,
sorry.
any gaps that you might have. Thank you, Akil. Please go ahead.
Sorry, Linda, I was just wanting to tell you there were questions that are answered, and the questions that had come through was
Yeah.
from a second one was from Derek Noy. He said, "Is the architect supposed to register with NHBRC? I thought it was for contractors." In my response, I did mention that some designers are also design build as a service, and just generally
Yeah.
speaking, knowing what's in the NHBRC, irrespective of this case, allows the designer to know what's in the client's best interest. But I think you can elaborate on that further, Linda.
Thanks, Akil. Thanks for that question. So just remember what I said when I made reference to the NHBRC. When you're doing a residential project, you register the project with the NHBRC, not yourself. The only requirements by law for you to register with is with SACAP within the various categories that they have, right? By law, right? Anything else over and above that, whether it's GBCSA, Green Building Council of South Africa, whether it's other international bodies, etc., those are not mandatory, right? Because SACAP is the regulatory body that governs the work that we do. And just on that element, I've engaged once recently with an architect, highly experienced, and we were talking about regulatory bodies and VAs and stuff. And she asked me the question, what is a VA, right? So I think it would be very, very problematic by this stage if you don't know the difference between a VA and a regulatory body. But just going back to that question, I hope, Akil, I've answered it adequately with regards to NHBRC.
I think you definitely did, Linda, and also just to
Yeah.
add, so I did add on to the chat as well, based on the answer that you said.
Yeah.
I think it's also pretty important that maybe a lot of the things that Linda is mentioning here, if you might have come across his words at some stage in your career. I know some firms, for example, only deal with construction phase or stages 4 to 6. And some firms only deal with stage 1 to 4. So either way, you might be missing out half of the conversation somewhere. But everything that Linda has given will give you a very good overview of the entirety of stage 1 to 6 and the documents that you probably would have come across at some stage. Further to add on to that, the last part is Linda mentioned there's a difference between a regulatory body and a voluntary association. And I think in maybe later stages of time, because voluntary associations haven't been as active as they might have been in the early 2000s, a lot of people don't know what it is. But it's a pretty important thing to know, especially for the questions that come out relating to professional development. Because once you're a professional, technically there's no way, there's no more education that you necessarily need to pursue. And so the only way to ensure that you are relevant is through CPD. But that's a conversation that we'll probably get into later on. Linda, back to you.
Yes. I'm glad you mentioned that last point, Akil, because in as much as being a part of a VA is not mandatory, unfortunately, there is a requirement by SACAP for you to have a certain number of points within a 5-year cycle. I think, for instance, category number 1, you need to demonstrate that you fulfilled certain requirements, and I think it requires about 25 points over a 5-year cycle. So you
Yes,
need to
that's correct,
upgrade
Linda.
yourself.
I have
Yes,
the
yes,
numbers. I have the numbers to
yes, yes.
explain that further,
Okay.
but in a 5-year
Yeah,
period, so for whoever doesn't
yeah,
understand, you need to get CPD points. These points ensure your relevance, right? And over a 5-year period, you have to get 25 points from the 3 different, let's say, categories of points that exist.
yeah,
One of the categories is attending workshops and conferences and those things because
yeah, yeah, yeah.
they're like lecture-based, learning activities. The second is you just doing your daily work. It's called work-based
Mm,
activities.
mm,
So you working every day, you can get points for that, or mentoring someone, right? And the last one
yeah,
is
yeah, yeah,
individual activities. If you publish a paper, or you say, for example, have done something on your own that contributes to your learning and development, for example, joining a VA, you will also get points for that. So those are the general things. And what you must have every year is at least, at minimum, from category one CPD point. You must get 5 in a year, but of those 5 in a year, you must have at least one that is category 1, which means you've attended conferences and lectures and whatever. And so over the entire period, you'll have 5, at least at minimum, 5 category 1 points, and the rest can come from wherever else. But I know that's maybe a lot of numbers to talk about now, and I don't want to sidetrack from the conversation, but everything that Linda is mentioning here today, if you are a professional that was joining this, you could have claimed CPD points for joining the session because you learned something from it. But you have to prove your attendance and prove that you engaged, and that's how you accumulate those points. But Linda, back to you.
Thank you very much, Akil, for
Sorry,
that.
sorry,
Zaba?
Mr. Phillips. I
Yes,
see
no
some
problem.
few hands. I see some few hands from the
Oh,
candidates. There's Nico Fori, and then Kanyiso Ngobo, and then Kulegani Bila, and then
oh,
Tsehu
wow. Look at that.
Mashile,
I think we,
and
we
then
are
the last
unable to
one
see
is
that.
Linda Luz.
Zama, maybe
Yeah,
maybe
yeah,
what
I
Are
can
happens,
you
see.
Zama?
able to see it on your side?
I couldn't, but I think Zama, what you can do is you can call each one of them out because you might see who is in order, and then that
Yeah,
person
yeah.
can speak and Linda can
Yes.
address it. Go for it.
No, we can start with Nico Fori. I think is the first one there.
Good morning, everybody. No, I just raised my hand when you asked the question if you're audible and we can hear everything. I'm covered. Thank you very much.
All right.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you, Nico.
Thank
Cool.
you,
Yeah.
Nico. Then
Yeah.
we can go to Kulegani. Kulegani. Yes, Kulegani, you can come through.
Morning, everybody. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes, we
Yes.
can, Kulegani.
Okay, thank you. I just wanted to ask two questions. Previously about the NHBRC. From some of my experience, I've noticed that they tend to also encourage owners to register for the NHBRC, not the property, but register as a developer in a sense. And I'm not sure if that is supposed to work like that. But then also, I just wanted to ask about the NEC contract. Is it true that there is no principal agent? From the experience I've had, they mentioned that all disciplines are fully responsible for their scope of work and there's no principal agent.
All right, thank you, Kulegani. Sorry, I think I missed a part of your second question. The one is the NHBRC, and the second one is
The NEC,
NEC. Okay.
yes.
And what about the NEC?
I just wanted to understand if it's true that with the NEC contract, there is no principal agent, but all disciplines are responsible for their scope of work.
Okay, okay. That's those two questions. Is that your last question?
Yeah, those are the two questions.
Okay. All right, let's start with your NHBRC question. So the way NHBRC has structured their business model, it's such that the person that pays or to register the project on the NHBRC, unless they've changed things over the years, but the last time I checked, the person who pays that is the client, your client, for instance, who wants to have a house built for them. The reasoning behind that is that NHBRC, as I mentioned previously, is covering the client in the instance or the event that they have a dispute, mainly with the contractor. So that in the event that it's discovered that the contractor is actually in the wrong, they can actually summon the contractor to either address the problem or to compensate you financially so that you don't have to go to a lawyer in order to resolve the dispute. So that's question number one. In terms of the NEC, as I mentioned, NEC is for complex projects, right? The way contracts are handled, and we'll deal with this in a bit more detail in a later slide. NEC is mainly for complex projects. You'll find that, let's say, for instance, I'll give this this example. Eskom wants to build a solar plant, for example, right? Now, if we had to go to the bill of quantities, and again, we'll go to in detail about this. If you had to look at the bill of quantities and you were to divide it into work groups, we'll talk about the terminology again at a later stage. Or what the QSs will call a cost summary. A cost summary, basically, it's the same as work groups, where it divides the work into electrical works, civil works, architectural works, etc., etc. You need to be able to gauge to what extent each discipline is involved in a project in order to establish who then becomes the principal agent. Because in that particular case, you may find that more often than not, one of the engineers, a specialist, becomes the principal agent. What's important here is that you don't want to overly allocate liability to yourself as an architect in a context where you don't have the biggest say, right? And the way to assess the level of involvement of each professional is by simply going to the scope of work and then looking at your BOQ, bill of quantities. And through that, you'll be able to apportion liability for every professional. I'm not sure if that answers your question, Kulegani.
It answers the NEC one, the JB not the JBCC, the NHBRC one. Was the question was, why are they motivating for clients to register themselves, write the full test, and actually pay not only pay for the fees for enrolling the property, but being able to enroll the property without the contractor?
Oh, okay. Kulegani, that's actually news to me. The last time I dealt with NHBRC, there was never this requirement. It would be interesting to establish as to why they are going this route, because the clients are not implementers of these projects. Previously, if what you're saying is true, previously you register the project, because the clients, more often than not, is not an expert in the field. So I would have to go and read up to find out why that has actually changed. So unfortunately, Kulegani, I may not have the answer for you, other than to say that I would need to do my research as to why that is the case.
Okay, because it especially happens when you're doing late enrollments.
Oh, so if you want to enroll your project as a client and you're late, there's an insistence or requirement that you actually register as a layman who's the client. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, that's what I've noticed, and why I was asking if it's actually part of the legal requirements or not, because it's been happening quite often recently.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Sorry, gentlemen, I just must
Okay.
interject there so that we stick with the time,
Yeah.
guys.
Yeah.
8:52 now,
Mm.
Linda. So
No
maybe we'll
problem.
have to, in the Q&A part, follow this up in a little bit more detail, but we have about 4 other
Yeah.
questions, Linda. Maybe we can take the
No problem.
question after you finish a couple more of your slides.
Yeah. Not a problem. Not a problem.
Okay, cool. Go for it, Linda.
Okay. So I can go ahead, Akil.
Yes, Linda, no, I was just saying that I know you told me you want to keep it within the hour and we're at 8:53 now.
Yes.
So you tell
Yes.
me how you want to progress.
Not a problem. Okay. So let me forge ahead. We'll have a full Q&A at the end. I think last time we budgeted up until 8, 9, 10, 11, I think about 11 o'clock for the
Yeah.
full session. So we're hoping that we'll stay within that time frame. So the other thing to understand is that you will be dealing with subcontracting, especially for your bigger projects. You need to understand under what circumstance you would need to appoint a subcontractor or a specialist, right? In last year's exam, we brought in this element of subcontracting because you need to understand, number one, what are the different types or of subcontracting, namely direct subcontractor, sorry, nominated subcontractor, domestic subcontractor. You need to know the difference, because in knowing the difference, you will understand from a perspective of risk and cost, which one becomes relevant. So we expect you to be conversant with the methods, or sorry, the types of subcontractors, right? And then there are contracts for professionals. In other words, the professional team, right? Again, you need to be very conversant with those contracts, whether it's JBCC and also your client's architect agreement. And here I'm talking to the issues of what constitutes, for instance, I'm making an example, a supplementary service or a specialist service versus what would be deemed as a standard service. Because what you find sometimes is that you've got architects who want to charge separately for certain elements of the scope. And for example, in this particular case, SANS 10400 Part XA, and which I think most of you ought to know about by now, which is your fenestration calculations. Now, this can't be a supplementary or a specialist service that you charge for separately, right? Because let's go back to the National Building Regulations. What are the National Building Regulations? The National Building Regulations give you a minimum requirement of how to comply with a particular code, whether it's universal access, whether it's Part O, which deals with your natural light and ventilation, etc., etc. So all of those 10 codes are integral to your standard service as an architect, right? Or as an architectural practitioner. So therefore, you can't charge separately for SANS 10400 Part XA. And that is why fees are always revised, and it's mandatory in terms of our act to revise the professional fees on an annual basis. So you need to understand, when working on a project, what is a standard service and what is a specialist or supplementary service. Sorry about this. I think also, to some extent, our fee guidelines do try to give an indication of what are standard services and what are supplementary. Right, so one of the first slides that I spoke to earlier on when we started is being conversant with the tools of the trade, which are the various documents that you will rely upon. Right, as a PA, it is important to at least have a basic understanding of costing and finances, especially if you are going to be overseeing the work of a QS and other team members like engineers and contractors. And it is important for the following reasons. From time to time, you might need to give comprehensive monthly reports to the clients, for instance. And you need to be able to extrapolate the raw data from a project in order to help you do this analysis. For example, whilst you might not be expected to compile a Gantt chart, or in other disciplines or fields, they call it a schedule, you need to understand the basic elements like a critical path. You need to understand a precursor, for instance, and all of that terminology. But in order to, you need to be able to understand whether a project is on track or not by simply looking at the Gantt chart and interpreting the information thereof, right? You need to be able to scrutinize and approve payments, right, to contractors. And in order to do that, you obviously need to go on site and to see to what extent work has been completed, firstly. Secondly, you need to be able to assess the quality of that work, because that feeds into what your QS will then compile in terms of the payment certificates. And remember, you don't compile the payment certificates in most cases, and we're talking here mostly your bigger projects. Why it is important to understand the financial side and the costing side of a project? It's because your smaller projects, let's say a house, for instance, where you need to forecast cash flows, you may not need, you don't necessarily need, and it's not mandatory to have a QS do that work for you. If you have a basic understanding of costing, if you see on the right-hand side, for instance, I've included the cost guide from ACOM. That cost guide, if you are working on a project for a client already at stage one, if you have that particular literature at hand, right, you can already give the client a an estimate, cost estimate for that particular project before you move to say you go to stage 4, when, for instance, a BOQ is being done, and then it's too late, only to find that the client doesn't even have the finances to execute the project, right? And then going back to that first panel, assessing and compiling professional fee accounts. What I've seen is in a lot of instances, architects are averse to handling the elements of doing their own fee accounts, and they outsource it to a QS. The problem with that is that if you've got a dubious QS or a dubious client, and you are being shortchanged in terms of your remuneration, where it's not commensurate with the work that you've done, you will not actually understand that you are being shortchanged and you're not getting value for money. Remember, in as much as we are giving value for money for clients, it's important that you also are remunerated in line with your efforts and the work that you've put in. And then reporting for auditing purposes, especially with government projects, the Auditor General with your bigger projects might ask you to report on a project, and it will become therefore very important how you're able to draw all the raw data from the contractors to the professionals in order to report, and we'll see details thereof as we go along. It's important that, again, that you look at the financial health of the project, right? And what are the critical elements? What are the primary indicators as a principal agent, namely costing, time, and the third one, why am I forgetting? Quality. The third one is quality. All of those things come into assessing the financial health of a project, and where there are red flags and it requires of you to make adjustments, then that's what you must do. And that's where creativity comes in as an architect. One of the things that's becoming mainstream now is life cycle costing, that you're not costing a project, especially in this day and age where you need to appreciate that of 100% of the carbon footprint, 40% thereof is generated by the construction or the building industry. So your ability to do life cycle costing, which will involve assessing the carbon footprint of the projects that you undertake, things like understanding concepts like embodied energy of every building element that goes into your project, will become important. Apologies that I moved to this next slide. And there are different tools that are available today in order to be able to do this. Then some of the things that you need to understand about costing, again, we'll go into it a little bit in a later slide, is in instances where your project is experiencing delays, whether that delay can be ascribed to yourself or it can be ascribed to someone else. you need to be able to then apply certain tools like CPAP. I don't know how many of you know about CPAP. We'll cover it a little bit later. In order to adjust your price, because a project cost for a project has a time frame. It has a start and an expiry date. So in an instance where a project in terms of the Gantt chart was scheduled for 2 years and it spills over to 3 years, how do you then adjust the costing, and how do you reduce the costing to a minimum or escalations to a minimum, right? So then with the extension or delays in a project, more often than not, you may find yourself in a situation where you also need to recalculate your own fees as well. How do you calculate this? Again, on the right, I've spoken about various tools that are available to you, and there are various AI tools as well that are also available, like the one that I've indicated on your right-hand side, where you can actually, in the absence of a QS, you can actually do your own preliminary costing, right? For bigger projects, I would not recommend that you rely entirely on AI or Construction Pro, like in this instance, to do your costing. You would still need to do due diligence by involving a QS. But what I'm saying is, from a preliminary stage, already these are tools that are available to you. And the nice thing with this is that your client will already see that you have a better comprehension of how to tackle a project in its entirety. Now, I spoke to work groups a little bit earlier on, and I must just give a disclaimer that you will find with experience candidates that there is a lot of jargon that we use within the industry. And in the use of that jargon, you'll see that one institution may use different terminology, but at the end of the day, to another institution, but at the end of the day, it's all one and the same thing. So there are those discrepancies and non-alignments that you will discover as you go along. And I think you will learn with experience how to identify those differences, right? So it's going to be very important to understand things like work groups. You'll find, as I pointed out earlier on, QSs still use like cost summaries, for instance, right? But for all intents and purposes, it's one and the same thing, right? Now, going into work groups, as I said earlier on, this is going into the details of a project. And as you see with the graphs on your right-hand side, I've divided, this is taken from a project a hospital project that I was working on, right? What I did is I took the bill of quantities and I subdivided the work into the different elements: general building work, roof installations, electrical, etc., etc. Then put it in a pie chart to say electrical work or general building work, which falls under the architects, based on the bill of quantities, makes up 40% of the weighting. Electrical work, 12%. And this becomes important when you apportion liability. And slide 11 and 12 will talk to this, why it becomes important to understand professional liability. And also it's important, as I've mentioned on the left-hand side, you will be expected, it's a requirement in terms of clause 7 of the Code of Conduct, right? To be able to actually have a PI. So you'll be expected to have any project at any given time. You must have an active professional indemnity, which is basically insurance, right? And companies, when you apply for professional indemnity, they will ask you, what is the nature of the work that you do, right? And you must be able to give them the full gamut of services or package of services that you offer. And you need to be able to say, to what extent or what is the weighting of the various activities that you provide, because your professional indemnity is tailored around that information. And if you don't give the correct information, and in a particular project, you have a legal dispute or contractual dispute, you will find that more often than not, insurance will not pay out or adequately so for that particular dispute. And what that will mean is that if the matter goes to court or there's litigation, you will have to fork that money out of your own pocket. So that is why, that is one of the reasons that this becomes important. Thirdly, or fourthly, it becomes important to analyze projects in this manner so that you understand what type of contractor that you use. So let's take, for instance, the second pie chart. If you appoint, for instance, look at the nature of the work here. It constitutes, mechanical work constitutes 42%. If you appoint a contractor who's classified as GB, say for instance 5, we'll talk to the categorization of contractors. That means he deals with mainly general building works. If you appoint a contractor under pie chart 2 and 42% is made up of mechanical work, then it means that you cannot appoint a contractor that is categorized as GB5. You need to appoint a contractor that is a specialist in mechanical works. So that means an ME, right, in terms of the CIDB grading. So that's where that analysis becomes important, right? So scenario 1, as I've said, already you can tell, because 40% of the work is general building work. Where it then also becomes important is that you need to know then, out of those contracts that we cited earlier on in the presentation, if the majority of the work is general building work, then you know you're using JBCC, right? If the work, for instance, is general building work and it's beyond 130 million, again, familiarize yourself with the CIDB gradings, then you know that you need the very minimum, a grade 9 GB contractor. And obviously then you know that you, as a principal agent, you will need to use the JBCC and you become the principal agent. In terms of the second pie chart, as I've mentioned, you will be using, because it's mainly mechanical works, GCC, and you know that the principal agent will mainly be your mechanical engineer from a professional services and a PA point of view. Now, going into a little bit more detail about CIDB. CIDB is the regulator for contractors in this country. Yes, you have other bodies like the Master Builders Association and all sorts of other things. But first and foremost, a contractor must be registered with the CIDB, especially for government-related projects. Now they've added other layers, like you must be registered on the CSD, which is the contractor supplier central supplier database, which sits with National Treasury, right? So, but importantly, if you're going to do, for instance, government projects, even with private sector projects, whilst it's not mandatory for private sector, it's important that with government projects, contractors are registered with CIDB. What is the purpose thereof? The purpose thereof is to ensure that for any projects that you undertake, you do not appoint a contractor which does not have the correct expertise. And also, you need to be able to understand which level of contractor you need to use. And that is based on the table that I've actually shown on the left-hand side. There are different levels of contractors you appoint, and the difference is in the cost of that project. So a CIDB, a grade 2, cannot undertake the work of a level 8 designation, which is work that is equal to 200 million and above. All right. So yeah, and we'll see the application thereof at a later stage. And then also on the right-hand side, CIDB has given the different classes of works. So remember, I talked to issues of work groups. The CPAP document refers to work groups, and the CIDB, again, going back to the issue of non-alignment, but saying the same thing, is classes of works. So it's breaking a project down, and you need to have the expertise to break down the different work groups as a principal agent. Because remember, in terms of the client architect agreements, one of the burdens that is placed upon you as a principal agent, you need to, one, establish the scope of works. Once you've established the scope of works, you need to be able to advise the client what professional services they will require. For instance, there are certain projects where you may require an EIA certificate or a traffic impact assessment. Then you know that you need to advise the clients that you need to have within your team a traffic engineer, right? Because at a later stage, if it becomes apparent that there was an oversight on your part in terms of appointing the requisite skills onto your professional team, you become liable because that expectation is placed upon you as a principal agent. One of the things that is not sometimes fully appreciated is that when you're dealing with a project, especially projects that are 2 years and more, your bigger projects, you need to be able to understand the global context that we exist in, right? Why that becomes important is that, and we'll see it in a scenario question at a later stage. Let's say you are going to use, for instance, you've decided to specify steel for your project, and the QS has done the bill of quantities to establish exactly how much that steel will cost, and it's being sourced locally, right? Should you get to a point where, for instance, there is a glitch in terms of cost overruns, right? I'll make a simple example. In a project, you had specified steel, which can be sourced locally. But currently, those of you that have executed projects recently, you know that companies that like Metal that provides supply steel, they scale down their operations, and if I'm not mistaken, they are preparing to shut down. Because what's happening currently is that it's cheaper to source steel from China because the production is much cheaper than to buy steel locally, right? So you need to understand those global shifts and what impacts those have on your projects in terms of the panel that I've shown on the left-hand side, on your 3 primary indicators, which I said is quality, cost, and time, right? Because one of the important things is to ensure that you offer best value for money for your clients. All right. Roles and responsibilities. I want to emphasize on this list that I've shown here is that communication. It's very important to understand that as a principal agent, you are the center point of everything, right? So there cannot be a professional, whether it's an engineer or QS, that circumvents you as a team leader and gives information to the contractor or the client without your knowledge. Because at the end of the day, as I said, the amount of liability, the burden placed upon you as a principal agent is very, very important. right? So nothing should go via the back door with anything that happens. Everything that happens needs to happen with your approval. Remember the way we are trained um, as architects, we need to have at least a basic understanding of what all the other disciplines do. Because when there is a problem, uh, in as much as, let's say, for instance, the greatest liability will be on another professional, there will still be some liability placed upon you as a principal agent. So you cannot fully absolve yourself where there wasn't a complete oversight by another discipline. Although there may be instances where, if you can demonstrate that you've done your part, where 100% of the liability will be that of another professional. So it's important to be able to distinguish that, especially from a dispute resolution point of view. The CPAP formula, I've spoken a little bit about it, and we'll deal with it in a scenario question. Right. I've spoken to, I won't delve too much into this particular slide, but when I spoke about financial health in a earlier slide, you need to be able to report on a monthly basis how you are performing. So to understand how a particular work group is performing is to look at the work executed on site versus the payments that have been made to date. And that's partly how you assess, and this is taken from an actual example from one of the projects that I worked on. Now, for me and for yourselves, this is the most important slide, or one of two most important slides that I wanted to deal with. And here, I will actually request more interaction from you guys, because again, we need to gauge your level of knowledge going into these exams, right? So
Linda,
that, yes,
Linda,
go
I'm
ahead,
just
Akim.
coming in. I'm just coming in
Yeah,
here. We are at 9:21 now, and so we have just passed the hour mark by 10 minutes.
all right.
Maybe before we get into this segment, you want to just check up on how these guys are doing. Like you said, we're gonna get
Yeah, yeah.
engagement from them, but maybe some reflection on what you just spoke about.
Yes, yes, yes. Thank you, Akil. Yes, candidates, please, and colleagues, please feel free to ask any questions at this stage, because maybe by the time we get to the end, you may have forgotten your question. So please feel free to engage.
I'm going to look at one question that's here, which is related to the beginning of what we said. While I'm answering this question, guys, please put your hands up and we'll try to get through to you. We'll probably, maybe Linda, I don't know what you think, but maybe for the next 8 minutes until 9:30, we can take some of those questions. So it also gives these guys maybe
Yeah.
time to use the bathroom or something.
Yes, yes, yes. And if you need to grab some water or whatever, maybe I think that's a good idea. I also need water. Maybe 2, 3 minutes.
Yeah, I think so. So let me try and address some of these, Linda. You're welcome to get water in the meanwhile. These are just based on our
All
previous
right.
discussions. Paige Myberg says,
Yeah.
with regards to CPD, while we're on the topic, are we working off the 2023 board notice or 2025 board notice shared 8 days ago on the SACAP website? So, Paige, that's a really good question. What happens is usually whatever is in the study guide that has been provided by Zama, sorry, the study materials list, whatever information is listed there is the things that we will go off. So if the exam doesn't explicitly mention use the 2023 or 2025 or whatever, then you are supposed to use whatever has been requested in the study materials list. That should be the one that's used, because that also means, for example, Paige, if you say something in the examination that is a mistake, or you have made a mistake, what the expectation of the memo was that you must say what is in 2024, but you mentioned 2023. And if 2023 was mentioned in the study list available that has been sent out by SACAP, then you can be defaulted on that answer, or both answers will be acceptable in the memo, because what was intended and perhaps what was provided are not exactly the same. So there's place for leniency. Paige, I hope that answered the question. I'll try to answer it in the typing box as well. We have, cool, Paige. We have a few other questions, I think, that's coming through. So you guys know, we now have 91 people who came to visit. Great to have you all here. We have another question coming through from Willem van Westhuizen. He says, the NEC contract does have a PA, but he is called the project manager in the terminology of the contract, but serves the same role to my understanding. Once Linda's back, we'll address that one, Willem. And then we got from Kayla Lewis. Most of the questions you dealt with will now be part of paper 2, meaning that we will have the resource material. So Kayla, what I think is important for you to note at this stage is whatever Linda has mentioned, again, is primarily to help you get an understanding of where questions might come from in paper 2. Now, you will have to conduct your own research on these documents to understand it further, but the resources made available to you is what is specifically mentioned in SACAP study list material. So for example, the SACAP study list material says bring in the JBCC and the SIRE study aid. Those are the only 2 permissible things that you're allowed to bring in. What Linda is mentioning here is that the resources from which the questions he is derived are not necessarily things that you might encounter every day, but it's things that you should be aware of in the field for however long you have been in the field and beyond. And so he's sort of suggesting that the research task must give you a broad overview of where information comes from. So if you see, for example, SABS in the exam, you're not going to fret. Or if you see, for example, stats essay in the exam, you're going to be like, oh no, I've not looked at stats essay before. By doing these research tasks, you would have familiarized yourself. And it's not that you need to know it in detail, it's that you have to have an understanding of what these documents are about. So when the questions come, you sort of have an idea, okay, cool, I'm not afraid, I can answer this. Recall, it could be a question based on the JBCC, which makes references to these external documents. So it's not like they're going to test you on these documents per se. They're testing on an understanding of the industry that is compliant with the JBCC contract or compliant with the Architectural Professionals Act, because that is part of the list of study topics you're required to study. Just to make that even clearer, Kayla, the things that we are doing in both exams is that the candidates are answering questions of compliance in terms of what they are required to study, which draws on their broad knowledge of what the field is. And what has happened is that it seems as though candidates don't appear to have enough knowledge of the field when they write the examination. So these research tasks are aided at helping you give you context so you can answer those questions better. I hope that was clear enough, Kayla. Okay, and if it wasn't, we'll try again to answer it in a different way. Linda, are you back?
I'm back, Kiel. Thank you very much.
Cool.
Holding the fort.
Linda, there was a question for you from Willem van Westhuizen. The NEC contract does have, yeah, well, right. Go for it if you would like to answer.
Yes. Just want to go to the question. So Willem asked, I'm not sure if it's a statement or question, but it says the NEC contract does have a PA, but he's called a project manager in the terminology of the contract, but serves the same role to my understanding. Okay. Yes, Willem, that's correct. But also you need to be aware that sometimes you may have a project, especially with government projects, where you are actually a principal agent, but then you still have a project manager who, for all intents and purposes, is a representative of the department and exercises oversight over everyone, right? So, but that does not take away from your role as a principal agent / project manager. They have the title, they hold the title project manager, but for all intents and purposes, they exercise oversight over the entire project. And most of the time, they are not technical people. But having said that, Willem, you must understand as well that every project, as I mentioned before, you need to take the contract and actually tailor it to the exact requirements of a particular project. And just remember that even with the NEC, it does not always mean that you will be the principal agent. And we've discussed obviously the criteria in terms of how you make that determination. I hope that question is answered. Is there another question? I'm able to see my chats now. Most of the questions you dealt with now will be part of paper 2, meaning we will have the
No,
resource
I
material.
answered
I
this
think,
one. I
yeah,
answered
you
this one.
dealt with that one, Akil. Yeah,
Yes, yes.
yeah,
And just to
yes,
confirm, because Kayla mentioned, maybe it's
yeah.
Key. I'm not sure. So sorry for the name there, but she says, perfect, thank you. I just want to confirm that we need to how to answer the question, not really know the detail. I think in principle that is what we're saying, Linda.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Right. So I think we've dealt with all the questions before
Yeah,
we
yeah.
move on to, yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
All right. So,
I definitely think so, Linda. So Linda, it is now 9:30 on the
yeah,
dot. So for this
yeah.
next segment, how long do you want to take on this particular portion?
I think
Uh,
let's, yeah,
Oh,
Zama.
gentlemen,
yes,
I
Ahmed.
think we have two hands up.
Oh,
Thokozani Ndawonde and then Rose Biseja or Boseja. We can
okay.
start with
Yes, please.
Yeah,
Thokozani.
yeah. Linda, well, how do you want to proceed?
Yes,
Look, they can ask questions and then we maybe one or two questions and then we'll deal with these slides because these I think are the most important because they consolidate everything that or largely consolidate everything we've been talking about. So
Okay.
yeah,
Yeah.
feel free to ask the questions.
yes, morning. This is Chokozani. I think mine is simple. I just wish to understand uh, what's the difference, if there is a difference between principal agent and project manager. Is it one and the same thing or is it different? Yeah, it's just that what's the difference between the two, principal agent and project manager? Thanks.
All right. Thank you for that question, Thokozani. So you will find in most cases when you're in practice that essentially there's overlaps between what we call a principal agent and overlaps, right? Sorry, and principal agents and a project manager. Now, in terms of the difference, this is the difference. As a principal agent, you are first and foremost a technical person, which is referred to as an architect, right? Over and above that, because of IDOW's definition of what an architect does, and I deliberately use the word architect and not draftsperson or any other law category, you have the ability and the jurisdiction to actually operate as a project manager. What does that mean in our context? That means you are in charge of the entire professional team. You do the services reticulation, you do the coordination in terms of firstly, the technical documentation, but secondly, at site meetings, right? And you become the center point. Yet you cannot use the term project manager. You can say I'm project managing. You cannot use the term project manager because it does not appear anywhere in our Act number 44 of 2000. But the term project manager rests with SACPMP. They are the custodians for the project management profession. Okay, so their project management is dealing with purely the administrative and sometimes the administrative and sometimes the legal elements of projects. So here's a scenario. You might be appointed on a project where the client says, you know what, do everything else, but I've got my own project manager. You need to then understand in that context that what you are doing on that project is purely as an architect. So you will not be fulfilling all the other functions of a project manager or of a principal agent. And therefore, that talks to then adjustment of your fees on the fee guidelines. I'm not sure if I've answered your question, Thokozani.
Yes, you did. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Any other questions, colleagues, candidates?
Yeah, hi
Before we
there,
move on to
everyone. It's Ross. I don't know if you can hear me.
Okay, I can hear you, Ross.
Okay, cool. So two questions. The one just got raised because of the previous question. If you're not principal agent or project manager as an architect, you automatically become a principal consultant. That's the first question. And then the other question is, if you have a consultant appointed under XA, and because we have to abide by all the SANS regulations, do you then lower your fees for the project or not on a fee based on percentage of project cost? Thanks. Those are the two questions.
Thank you very much, Ross. I'll try and tackle your first question, and then we'll go on to I'll deal with your first question because I think I missed something when I was writing down that question. So your second question. So if you look at the fee scales, right? The fee scales are crafted in such a way by SACAD on the assumption that you are a principal agent, right? That is why they have a section that deals purely with supplementary and specialist services, right? So remember that the fee guidelines are exactly what they say. They're literally guidelines, right? What that means is that between the client and yourself, you can still use your own discretion in terms of how far beyond that benchmark or baseline or how far below you go, right? But having said that, so that goes back to your second question. Yes, in most cases, you will have to lower your fees if your role is reduced from a principal agent or project manager. And that's where your discretion comes in, which you will then have a discussion with your clients. I hope I've answered that question. So bottom line is the fees that are well, they're not prescribed, they're gazetted, they are a guideline, and they are simply a benchmark, and they assume that you are the principal agent on a particular project. Your second question, you mentioned something about a principal consultant. You've introduced a slightly different term to principal agents. Do you mind? I don't know if, Akil, you've captured that first question adequately.
I'll repeat it. So
No
the
problem.
first question was based on the last question that was asked by the other gentleman, was that if you are not a principal agent or project manager, as
Yeah.
the architect, do you automatically become the principal consultant then on the project that oversees all the other consultants?
Not necessarily, Ross. Again, I think it will go back to remember one of the most important things you are doing on stage, work stage one, is to detail the scope of work, right? So you cannot automatically become a principal consultant. And by saying principal consultant, I'm assuming that you are using principal consultant and principal agents interchangeably.
Can I maybe answer the question?
Yes, sorry?
Can I maybe answer the question? I think I know what
Okay.
he's asking.
Yeah, please go ahead.
Okay, so principal consultant and principal agent doesn't have anything to do with one another. Principal consultant is for stage 1 to 4, and principal agent stage 5 and 6. So not being principal agent doesn't nullify or mean anything to do with principal consultant. That is a completely different thing that is in the design stage coordinating the consultants. So if you are not
Yeah.
principal agent, you can or cannot be principal consultant. It doesn't change anything.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you very much for that input. Candidates, I think we also need to be careful with the wording that we use in contracts. So if a terminology is not part of, let's say, for instance, the mainstream jargon within your client architect agreement and JBCC, I would advise that you rather not use that term, because what it can do is to cause confusion. So with the last input or answer that has been given, I'm interested to know, where does the term principal consultant come from? Because remember, if we go back to IDOW, there are distinct categories and distinct terminology provided for inside that act. So I'd be very interested to, and like I said, maybe there are terms that are thrown around within the industry because we are working sometimes in different sectors and things like that. Maybe some are working more in mining sort of sector, others residential, etc., etc. So with that last input, I'd like to know where the term principal consultant comes from. And I take your explanation of a principal consultant being only involved from stages 1 to 4.
Let me get
I
back
think
to you
that,
on that one.
yeah.
Guys, just to mention, what Linda has said is very important, and I think Kayla, you must tell me just now, right, what's the correct pronunciation is. The important part that Linda is trying to make is that there are specific wording specifically inside of paper 2 that is being referred to. If they talk about principal agent, that is the word he must refer to, right? And so what Ross was trying to clarify is he says there's some ambiguity, right? And Lina is mentioning in specific for the JBCC contract, there's only 3 real terms that are there. One of them is principal agent. Of course, the other one is contractor. You need to figure out which is the one that we're referring to. But we don't want to lose out on too much time because Linda has much more important things to discuss here at this moment to give more clarity. So Linda, maybe
Yes.
it's 9:41, Linda, and I know yesterday you and I discussed this specific scenario. I don't know if anyone remembers it, but the great part here, Linda, is you're going to tell us about a real contextual scenario that's happened in South Africa, and you're going to bring it back to the paper and how it would possibly
Yeah.
come out.
Yeah. All right. No, thank you very much, Akil. So we thought between myself and Akil, let's bring all of this together by throwing in a scenario question to see how best to demonstrate how best to consolidate your knowledge base and some of these source documents that we've been referring to, right? But importantly as well, remember we said that even in the absence of documents that may be at hand, we also want for you to demonstrate your ability to apply critical and creative thinking, right? So to that extent, I just want to say something that we picked up from previous papers. So when we mark your papers, we will sit with an answer sheet, okay, for those who will be actually marking and moderating this year. But previously, we would sit with an answer paper and we would sit with the question. The answer sheet, the answers from candidates. Sometimes you may find instances where your answer does not completely match our answer sheet, right? And purely because there might be different iterations in terms of answers to a particular question. So in that case, we are of the view that as long as you can prove and your answer makes sense, then the markers will actually give you some credit for the answer that you've given, right? So just be aware of that, because we're saying an answer is not always one size fits all. And we'll see as we deal with this particular question. So like we said, over and above the proxy documents and all of the other documents that we refer to, you need to apply that creative thinking. So let's go into this question. I've crafted a question, which is actually a real life example. So many years ago, I think in the early 80s, just after, the 1980s, early 80s, De Beers actually, De Beers, that's the diamond producer. They built a building, and I think, I'm sure some of you have seen that building on Diagonal Street, right? Which is mainly a glass facade. And maybe let me just read the question, and then if I need to expand on it, I'll do so. So you are appointed as a principal agent by a big client, that is De Beers, to head their flagship project, which is a new building, right? Now, so that's what happened back then in the early 80s. Now, what happened is that during construction, it became apparent that the lead times okay, so sorry, this is just a hypothetical example. During the construction of the project, it became apparent that the lead times you factored into the builder's program or your schedule for delivery of the glass from China needed to be extended by 12 months due to a force majeure. The contract value is, at the time, the contract value was 2.8 billion, right? Now, stay with me on this question. I want to go to the next slide, because on the next slide, what I want to show you is how to tackle a question that is a scenario question that's very long, right? So what I've done is I've divided the approach in 3 distinct stages. The first stage is, like we said before, firstly, locate where that question fits within the 6-stage work stage model, right? Important. Otherwise, if you are, thinking in terms of stage 2 and the stage that question refers to is stage 5, then you'll obviously have a problem. And then look at what the operative words or keywords are within that question, right? Because if you don't, you are most likely to misfire. And like my professor used to say, scratch where it doesn't itch. Then, thirdly, think about the source documents that you are going to rely upon when answering that question. And you'll see within the question itself, I've then color-coded elements within the question according to these steps. So pardon me, but we'll go back to that earlier slide. Now, just to go back to the real life example. So De Beers actually built this building out of glass in the early 80s, and there were some negative repercussions that came along with it, and we'll talk to those. Now, the first question, 1.1. Okay, but sorry, first of all, what I've done with the question as mentioned, I've highlighted the, the keywords or the operative words, and you'll see principal agent. When we talk about a principal agent, what is the document that you are most likely have to rely upon? And there on to the right of principal agent, it says client architect agreement. There may be other documents that you might want to rely upon, but first and foremost, you know that you'll have to have it at the very least, the client architect's agreement. Another one, I've referred to the builder's program. When you think about a builder's program, what document comes to mind? One of the most important documents is your schedule that has your critical path and your predecessors and successors. So all of that terminology, you need to be conversant with. And then we are talking about delays here, or we're talking about lead times that have extended the project by 12 months. So already we know there are contractual implications, there are financial implications, and for that, what documents then becomes important. There are provisions within the JBCC, right? I've mentioned the JBCC. And mind you, sorry, I've also cited the work stages relevant for each keyword, right? So in this case, we are going to locate our question, this particular element to work stage 5, right? And there are provisions for delays within the contract. And these are disaggregated between the contractor and yourself as a professional. So for instance, if the delay can be ascribed to you, you will be largely liable. And if that delay can be ascribed to the contractor will be equally, the contractor will be largely liable. And you need to differentiate in terms of professional liability, right? And then there's certain terminology like force majeure that you must be conversant with, and that's defined again in the JBCC. So now we've established what are the key words or operative words. We've established what are the key documents. We've also established which work stages around which we can frame the question. Now, 1.1, what is the impact on the contract value and contract sum, if so, and how can this be calculated? So what is this question say? Your budget for the project was forecast at 2.8 billion. So, and I'm going to throw this question at any of you to try and answer. Does anyone want to take a stab at this question? Candidates?
I can give it a go.
Please.
Due to the terminology of force majeure, meaning that it's beyond the control of the agents responsible. So according to this, the contract value and contract sum has no change, but the contractor has to adjust the program for this change, if I'm correct.
Yeah, thank you very much for that answer. This was, sorry, if when you do answer a question, please do mention your name.
Oh,
because-
Khulukani.
Kulu?
Khulukani.
Khulukani. Okay. Thank you very much, Khulukani. If I had to mark you on this question, I would most likely give you a 1. And I'll tell you why. This is actually a bit of a sneaky question.
Can I try and
I've
answer
mentioned.
it?
Okay, please go ahead.
So you do mention that the delivery of glass from China needs to extend the contract by 12 months, but did the contractor order the glass late that made it a 12-month delay? So can he actually claim force majeure? So there needs to be more context to that part in order to assess the EOT. If it is beyond the contractor's control, then yes, you'd give an extension of time and increase the contract sum accordingly because of the PNGs of the contractor.
Okay. Thank you very much. Your name again?
Ross, sorry.
Rob.
Ross, ROSS.
Ross. Okay. Yeah, we seem to have Ross and Khulukani who were the most vocal or the bravest here. But thank you very much for your answers. I think in either in both answers, I would most likely give you, if let's say it was a percentage, I would give you guys both maybe 60%, right? I'll tell you why. Again, it's going back to the keywords. Now, if you understand, yes, we appreciate the fact that there's a delay. But if you understand in terms of liability or the cause of the delay, the question specifically mentions force majeure. And like you guys have rightly pointed out, I can't remember if it's Ross or Khulukani, that Yes, it was Kulugani. Force majeure, if you look at this definition or in the JBCC, basically means an event that is completely out of the control of either yourself as a principal agent or the contractor or a subcontractor. It in most cases implies that you did your part, and in this question certainly, you did your part because there was a builders program in place. You had factored in lead times into, and I hope again, certain terms that will become mainstream for you, like lead times, understand what lead times is. So the lead times were factored into the Gantt chart or the schedule or the builders program. Again, I'm using three different terms, but all three terms mean the same thing, right? So it was out of anyone's control that the glass was delayed by 12 months. Now, going back to the question. So what we can already establish now, no one is liable for the delay, number one. Secondly, that means the contract, and listen to my wording very carefully, the contract value can change, right? And I think Kulegani, maybe that's where you were unable to draw a distinction. What is a contract value versus a contract sum? A contract value, I'll use my own way of explaining it, is basically a contract sum, but subject to change, right? And it's very important when you drop a contract with a client and a contractor in the JBCC that you differentiate between the two, because if you use contract sum and you want to then revise the cost of a project at a later stage, then you'll have serious problems because you have effectively said, we are going to pin the cost at this particular amount, nothing less, nothing more, regardless of whether someone dies or not in the process. So yes, I think those were good answers, but I think those were some of maybe the shortcomings with the answers that you've given. Before I move on to the next question, is there any question or anyone with a comment?
It's Akio here. Linda,
Yes.
I love the way that you approached it, because you asked the candidates what do they think the answer is, and then you gave them the rundown. If
Yeah.
I can talk from observation, and it's the same thing we mentioned last week as well. Candidates go into a question with a preconceived idea, not because they are a problem, but because your experience dictates that there's more things that could have possibly happened than what the question is asking. And that may be the case. But understand that the question is masking what is very clearly going to be the answer. You have to decipher that. And the reason for deciphering is because in the world, every day, the information you get is not obviously made available to you. Yes, you might say that there's a problem on the site and whatever, but you have to interpret the information to make meaning. That's part of what the examination does here. We give you a scenario that's maybe messy, but you have to deconstruct it. And what was evident here from what Ross mentioned is that Ross clearly has great insight into all of the various problems a contractor may cause. Like he might not have done his job on time. Ross has world experience that is trumping what the question is asking. It's not that Ross is wrong, and it's very important to mention that. It's not that he is wrong. Ross is looking at it from a different angle because his worldview has shaped the way he thinks. And the same with Kulukani. But that's not what the question is asking. The question is stating very clearly the problem is force majeure. How do you respond in relation to that? And most candidates come in either with a fear that they don't know what's going on, so they mess it up, or they already have too much of experience, or let's not say too much, they have experience which clouds what the question is being asked. And what we're doing here in the papers, Linda and myself, is we're trying to tell you to see through the mask, see through what is actually being asked, because that's how you pass the exam. Clarity. So, Linda, sorry, man, back to you. I just wanted to emphasize, because based on the observation of the last few sessions and engagements and whatever experience we have, we've noticed that in the papers that were shown to us, these are the problems that candidates have. But sorry, Linda, back to you.
Yeah, and thank you very much, Akil. And it goes back to, try and identify the key words, because those then give a proper framework to the question, so that the question and the answer are not open-ended, Okay, so that's why again, you know, Achilles mentioning or emphasizing the word force majeure. So yes, moving on to 1.2.
Sorry, Linda,
Calculate. No problem.
continue.
Please.
With
There's a bit
regards
of
to point 1,
yeah.
what is your answer to part 2 when it says, and how can this be calculated?
Oh yes, yes. Sorry, I actually forgot to deal with this particular question. But I mean, I think 1.2. Oh yes, yeah. So 1.2 is kind of a follow-on to that. But what I'm asking here with 1.1, if the answer is there's an impact on the contract value, how can this be calculated? And this, I'll go back to what we discussed earlier on, to say that we will have a particular answer in the answer sheet, you know, but this is where discretion comes in very important. How can this be calculated? So what we now know is that there was an impact on the cost because of the delay, right, on the project. Now, there are various ways, and therefore, as a result, so the cost will obviously escalate to a certain amount. So the question is here is, how can you calculate it? So I'll cite an example based on the last question that was asked. You could, for instance, say, okay, what we know is that there are escalations that are inflation related. So you could take, for instance, the contract amount or the contract sum and say, because this is extended by a year, let's look at what the indices or the average increase over the past 5 years have been in South Africa. Let's say you're sourcing the material in South Africa. Then, without using any other complicated formula, you could use that rationale in terms of recalculating, right? And you can do that in conjunction, for instance, with the QS, for instance. And they might even have another method of doing it based on their experience. Another way, which we're going to cover broadly, is to say, okay, there are tools available already for the construction industry, namely your CPAP. How many of you have heard about CPAP, or let me put it this way. Has anyone heard of CPAP and what that means? Because that term is actually in the JBCC. Does anyone want me to explain what CPAP is? Or are you comfortable?
No,
Sorry?
please.
Okay. So CPAP is basically, in essence, a scientifically based approach to calculating either possible increase in the cost on a project, or so it's basically saying that this was the budget for a particular project, and then what the CPAP committee has done is to create a formula by which to plug in certain values within that formula to eventually give you even a projected cost. Let's say in this case, for instance, if we know that there's a delay of 12 months, you factor in that 12 months into that formula, and it gives you a certain amount. That certain amount then is used to inform the cost of the project and the client to say that, be aware that this project has jumped from this value to that value. That's simply what it is. And what I'd urge you guys is to go to either Stats SA website or any other place within on the internet to source the CPAP documents, because and then familiarize yourself with how to do the calculations thereof. I hope that answers the question. Can I move on to the next question then, which is partly
Sorry.
answered?
I also have my hand raised. Can I say something? Sorry.
No problem. Yeah.
You can go first, Maya.
Sorry, I just wanted to ask before we move on. I know the answer will be different for everyone, but if you could give us a sort of model answer of what that is through that discussion we just had. And also, looking at that 12-month period, my initial instinct would be sure it's force majeure, so no one is liable for that delay. And there will be, what did you say, escalations and inflation. But surely the contractors' P's and G's are also affected and somehow need to be incorporated. And also, I suppose it depends if the glass is affecting the critical path. So I think there's a lot of aspects in that for me make the question more unclear.
And just to add to that, before you answer, I think I'm asking almost the same question, but when there's force majeure, we are taught that it is no one's fault, so therefore they get extension of time without cost, because no one really has to pay that because it's not their liability, but obviously there will be a cost involved. So will the contract sum still change, or the contract value still change, even though it's extension of time without cost?
Linda,
Thank you.
you still there?
Yes, I'm still here.
Linda, sorry, I wanted to also just respond to that quickly. I was like, "Whoa, ladies, it's coming to all of the those little what you call monkeys on your back that come through, eh? That add to the complexity. It's killing you, eh? I understand what Maya mentions about clarity, but the question is actually, guys, it's really clear, right? It's a pretty obvious question, and it's a scenario that you are reading very deeply into when it's not that deep. And that's part of, I would say, the ability to discern what you need to answer, which Alina's going to answer now. But I wanted to make that comment because it's really important. Everyone notices that. There's nothing wrong with what Maya said, nor with what Kyla has said. Thanks, Kyla, for the correction and pronunciation. It's the fact that you're reading significantly deep into a question that is not asking about some of those things. But Linda, go for it. Sorry, man, Linda. I just have to, it's observations, you know?
Yeah, thank you very much, Akil. So just to answer your question, I think, Maya, what would be the model answer? You know what I think for me is the safest thing to do, especially with real life projects, is to say, okay, there are three possible ways by which one can actually calculate the possible escalation. And then just to show due diligence for your client, and even for the exam, for that matter, is to take those three examples or alternatives and place them before you, and then see which one gives you the most ideal answer. So in a real life project, if using CPAP, for instance, gives you the least increase of the contract value, then I would choose that over and above the other two examples. And I'm not going to exhaust all the ways by which one can actually calculate the escalation. Bottom line is there are various ways to do it. So it's not mandatory. And I think I must emphasize that just because CPAP is factored into the JBCC, that you must use, and this is one of those examples where we are saying you can use your discretion. If that answer or alternative makes sense to the examiners, then by all means use that example. But best case scenario is for one to sit with 2-3 examples to demonstrate that you've actually done due diligence. And then going on to the next question, sorry. Yes, an escalation of this nature will definitely have an effect or an impact on your P's and G's. And if anyone doesn't know what P's and G's means, it's preliminaries and generals. That's the first component in your bill of quantities that covers things like site establishments, that covers your electricity, all your overheads, security, all your overheads that are related to sites, establishment, and operation. Because when you are costing, you're not just costing for brick and mortar. There are people that are managing not just the site, but that entire establishment. So there will definitely be an impact on your P's and G's. And if someone is still not comfortable with the definition of P's and G's, you're welcome to put up your hand. So there definitely will be an impact. And CPAP, that is why I think it is safer to use CPAP, because it factors all the cost elements that one would find within a bill of quantities. And then I think the second question also alluded to the fact that maybe the question is a little bit open-ended in terms of how to calculate this change. Yes, it might be a little bit over open-ended, but as Akile said, please don't think too deeply about that question. And again, going back to identify the keywords. And you mentioned something about extension of time, I think the last question. In determining the cost impact, it's very important to look at it from the contractor's point of view. But secondly, more often than not, depending on how your contract has been crafted with the client, there will also be an increase in your fees, and which is calculated by way of extension of time. So it's important that when you report back to the client, that you separate the two cost elements, that of the contract value and that of the professional fees. And I've seen, again, professionals wanting to outsource that completely to the QS, to their detriment. So the increase needs to be all-encompassing. Hopefully, I've answered those questions adequately. And if there isn't a follow-up to that, I will move on to the next question. Are there any follow-ups?
Linda, I think we might not have any more time for a follow-up right now. I think, Linda,
Yeah,
it is
yeah.
it's 10 past 10, so you complete the section you need to, and then I will manage
Yeah.
I will take down the questions and things that are unaddressed.
Yeah, yeah.
I'll give it
Yeah.
to you when you're done. Right. Cool.
Not a problem. Not a
Guys,
problem.
please just
Thank
put
you
your
very much,
queries
Akil.
in the chat. I will take note of them, and afterwards I will give it to Linda to address. Thanks, Linda. Back to you.
Yeah. Thank you, Akil. And then question 1.3 basically goes back to what I've just mentioned now. There will be an impact on your fees, and you need to know the formula to use and how to use that formula. I'm not sure why we are stuck here on this slide.
Maybe
Sorry, guys, my slides.
stop sharing and reshare, Linda.
Oopsie.
Oh, there
Okay.
we go.
Yeah, sorry, it's fast forwarded. Okay, yeah, there we go. Then I think, sorry, there's a second slide to this. Sorry, this is a continuation of the previous slide. Now, here it says, sorry, you are appointed as a principal agent. Sorry, it's after completion of the project. The JSE building opposite De Beers experiences a spike in the electricity costs due to the reflective glass that reflects heat rays onto it. JSE is suing your client for this. Mind you, I was saying to Akil yesterday, this is actually a real life example. So the reason why the cost of the electricity on the monthly basis ballooned was due to the fact that the demand on the the artificial ventilation was substantially higher. And when they did their sort of investigations, the old JSE, which is opposite De Beers, they discovered that one, the cost shot up soon after the glass facade was actually installed. And like I said, the glass facade was a basically reflective glass, which is literally like a mirror. And if you know the effect of that, it reflects everything, including heat rays, which then resulted in overheating of the JSE building. So building on from that, the next question is explain as to who must take professional liability for this and what rationale, sorry, the rationale is missing an E, you will use to apportion the liability for this. And I think I've covered some of that. And again, identify the keywords and the source documents and which stage we are locating this problem. Does anyone maybe want to answer quickly? Otherwise, we can move on. All right. I will not answer this question because earlier on, we spoke to the ability to differentiate between the different trades, between the different disciplines. And the way you would answer this question in terms of liability is to look at the percentage of work out of the 100% within the professional team. And that is your clue in terms of how to answer that question. Then the next question is, which part of the national building regulations would you rely upon to assess the energy efficiency of the building? Now we're referring to De Beers building itself. And it's important in this particular case because you do not have openable windows or fenestrations, right? To assess the efficiency of the building and state the occupancy classification. Here, we are not only testing your ability to identify which source documents, but within the national building regulations, which elements of the building regulation or codes are we referring to? And that will help you answer the question. Now, you will be thrust in situations after you've written your exam and hopefully passed to test your ability to work within a team. And so teamwork is going to be very important in the work that you do. Yes, in as much as you will have to assert your leadership role, it's also important that you also have the ability to listen and to learn from others whilst not relinquishing that leadership role. So this slide is just mainly to emphasize that point. And then secondly, I think some of us only got to know the code of conduct, which is a document that is prescribed by SACAP. But you also need to be very conversant in knowing that code of ethics, because one of the most important things that is probably not taught much at varsity is how to maintain your credibility by complying with our code of ethics as prescribed by SACAP. Now, this slide is...
Just want to add to that, it's the code of ethics by SAIA and the code of conduct by SACAP. Just a correction on that.
Yes. Oh, sorry. Yeah. Thank you so much for that, Akil. So there is a code of conduct by SACAP, and if you are registered or affiliated with a VA, you are expected also to uphold their code of ethics. Thank you, Akil. Now, this slide is partly to show you, to demonstrate to you that to actually get to the stage, you make up part of the elite within the profession. Because when I did my research, I realized that year on year, the average number across all learning sites within South Africa, that's all your tertiary institutions that offer architecture as a course, is about 1,800. And if you look at that pipeline through the academic or tertiary level, right to the point that you are at currently, only 200 on average each year are able to actually graduate, right? So it's important to understand that, you are actually a high achiever for being able to get to this stage. What I want to talk to you on this slide as well is that there's a lesser known piece of legislation which is called the Skills Development Act of 97 of 1998, right? The importance of this is that some of you might go into practice and running your own practices, and you need to know some of these pieces of legislation. Because if your practice is generating annual revenues of either 15 million and above annually, or it doesn't have that, has employees that are 50 plus or more, you're expected to comply with the Skills Development Act in contribution towards transformation of the sector. So the requirement is that 1% of your annual turnover must be spent on paying or retaining and mentoring, mentees or interns, as popularly known in our sector. Yes, I think I've said enough. We can open the session up then to a Q&A.
Linda, while everyone is preparing the questions, so guys, please just have your hands up for the questions that you have. Also type them into the chats because we currently have 2 questions in there. One from Edward Gibbons, the other one from Ross, which we'll also address. But Linda, I would like you, while everyone is preparing the question, guys, please put your questions in the chat, even if you are going to ask them, because in case we don't have the opportunity to address them, we will do our best to address them after the session via Zama, who will send out the responses to you guys. Linda, can you go back a couple of
Yes.
slides very quickly?
All right.
Okay, let's go
You'll
back.
tell me when to stop.
Okay, let's go back to the scenario. Yes, thanks, Linda.
Yeah.
Linda,
All right.
if I was a candidate looking at this, and I'm trying to create the model of a candidate now, right? And I'm basing it on the input that Ross and the rest of the people gave. I don't
Yeah.
know if you guys know this. Linda, I don't know if you know this book. So I was at a conference presenting on artificial intelligence in interior design, and
Yeah.
one of the things at the DAS conference is Marlene, who's the organizer. They usually give gifts to the presenters. So I received a gift called
Yeah.
"Surrounded by Idiots," a book by Thomas Erickson.
Yeah.
And as much as it might sound like it's talking about people being idiots, it's actually talking about your unfortunate bias towards thinking everyone else is an idiot and you are not, right? That's what the book is kind of about, right? And it's about the
okay.
four types of human behavior. Now, what I want to mention here is to you in most cases, and what Linda and I have noticed. Just some context quickly before I carry on. Linda and I have been advisors to the PPE exam, so that means we have given input onto what questions should be like and where do we think the paper should go and those kind of things, right? So that's Linda and I, our context. When we discuss with the examination team never is trying to fail you, nor are they not trying to see your perspective. If your answer is very far veered off from what the expected general result is, then that means that you will get it wrong. But there's never an instance where markers are trying to fail you. So why I mention this book is because in the book, the premise of the story is that, or it's not a story, it's actually a piece on understanding people. The premise of it is that there was a person that hired many people in their company, and he thought everyone is an idiot, but he genuinely believed that. And so the author says, but if you hired a whole bunch of idiots, doesn't that sort of suggest maybe you are the one that is not the smart one because you hired a whole bunch of idiots? So what is the part I would like you to extract from that is there's no one that's stupid in the way they've answered it. Everyone comes with their own unique perspective based on the things that they know and their background and their history. So you must understand there's value to what you're saying as long as you can substantiate it, which is what Linda has mentioned multiple times. When Linda mentioned creativity and answer, he is emphasizing, and I'm trying to explain to you, Linda mentioned this in 4 different ways, that the answer you give is not a one size fits all. He is saying the reason why we are providing these questions is to help you realize there's a plurality of answers, but there is definitely a logic. There's definitely things you cannot say. So, for example, the kind of things that if you're looking at this example, they are explicitly telling you that the glass is the cause of the problem. For you to go and now question whether the glass is a problem, it's in your professional right if you were the person in the scenario who was being affected. But right now, the exam is stating very clearly to you, this is the grounds in which we are establishing fact. Don't try to question the grounds because now you're going to put yourself at jeopardy. Maybe in the real life scenario, it might not actually have been the glass that caused the problem. But we are saying now, hypothetically for this scenario, accept what we are giving you. Answer the question based on what we are telling you. And so in response to the model of the candidate, here's what has happened with Ross, Kurgani, Kyla, and Maya, the 4 of them.
Yeah.
Excuse me. What's happened is they have looked into the scenario and they have looked for what you might call ambiguities or what you might see as non-clarities. And the mind is focusing on those things which is avoiding the question. What Linda's mentioned here in stage, he says, here's the steps. Look at which stage you think is relevant in. In last week's session, I said there's 7 steps towards becoming a professional. Situate yourself inside that. So if it's in paper 2, we're dealing with step 6 and 7, right? The construction of a project and opening your own practice. Within that, when you're constructing a project, there are 6 work stages that SACAP has. And within those 6 work stages, we are looking at stage 4 to 6 or 5 to 6. And within that, there is the construction process that's based on the JBCC, where it talks about the tender process, the construction, defects liability period. So all of these things are nested within each other. Now that you've situated yourself inside of that, Linda said, work stage 1 to 6, then look for the operative words. What are the words that we're talking? Because these are the factual realities. The question is not, is this the case? Is the reflective glass the problem? The question is, the reflective glass is the problem. Your answer must be based on that context, on that premise. And the next thing is, so where does the answers come from? It comes from the source documents, which Linda has outlined here for you, which you can see is an extraction of all of the things Linda has said in prior slides. So the important part here is the model of the candidate is, I live in the real world. I need to face a client in many different capacities. And while that might be the case because you are questioning reality in the real world, here you are not questioning reality. We are telling you this is a reality. Answer what we are asking you. And if you think that reality is completely wrong and ludicrous and exceptionally nonsense, you can say that in the question, make sure to give your substance. Because without your reasoning, then we don't know if what you are saying is valid or plausible. Linda, that is my contribution to this part. Back to you.
No, very important, Akil. Yeah, as long as the answer, you have a proper interpretation, number 1, of the question, and we've highlighted how to do that. And whatever answer you give is plausible by way of whether it's precedents or supporting documents or a clause from the JBCC, right? That will be acceptable. So let's go to question 1.4, for instance. So I just want to go back to 1.4 because maybe there was a slight oversight on my part. What I've done is with this question, is to establish the liability, who's legally responsible when it comes to the lawsuit, if there is a lawsuit, for instance, in this particular case, right? Now, I've obviously cited stage 1 and 4. Why am I mentioning stage 1 and 4? I'm mentioning stage 1 because that's when you draw up your client's architect agreement that we have now established is one of the source documents. Stage 4, why stage 4? Because yes, the client's architect agreement comes usually at the beginning where the client and yourself sign. But the problem itself becomes only apparent in stage 4, where in this particular case, for instance, at least we know that it's a force majeure. Neither the clients the principal agents nor the contractor are liable. But then we are saying it's stage 4 because that's where most likely, some of this anomaly or ought to have been picked up, right? And at stage 4, we know at that point you are, where you are actually doing your final construction drawings or technical documentation is the point at which you ought to have realized, definitely, if not stages 2 and 3, by stage 4, when you're supposed to be doing your proper assessments, thermal assessments, SANS 10400 and all of that technical elements that you ought to have picked up, that having an insular building with no windows and using reflective glass will be a problem, right? So going back to that, this is how you're supposed to actually approach the questions. But yeah, thank you very much. I don't know if there's any other question or inputs.
Yeah, I think there are some that will be coming through now, Linda. Just to note for everyone that's here as well, in addition to what Linda has mentioned in his work stages, yesterday Linda and I had this discussion for an extended period. Linda drew the diagram on the top right corner. He drew it to illustrate the reality that is being described in the question. Many candidates look at the paper and all they do is they discuss it in words. And so what happens is they miss out that when you draw the question and you draw the frame of reality, whether it's arrows or stick people or whatever, what's happening is you are trying to grapple with what the question is actually asking. And when you do that, it becomes exceptionally clear what it is that you need to do. But because all of these words are operating in your head, you're not able to figure it out. A lot of people say we are visual learners or whatever the case is. Let's try to lean into our visual predisposition to help you answer the question. So what Linda's done here is the question actually doesn't have a diagram in it. The question is just a picture of the building so that you can locate yourself. Linda drew the diagram out to explain the reality of the situation within which you can now say, oh, okay, cool. So it is happening that way. If you draw it and you try to reason it out and just say it's not a section like this, but say maybe it's a diagram of where in the process do we fit? Or if the contractor said it happened at this stage, which is stage 2, the contractor wasn't even involved in stage 2. So how can this be? These things will help you correct anomalies. And I mentioned this in many of the presentations I give as well. Guys, if you don't, part of your skill set is to draw. Like if you're not drawing out reality, you are making yourself at a disadvantage or a disservice. It gives you a lot of clarity to do that. So Linda, the questions that we have coming through here, there's a couple of them, and we also have, I think, some hands that are up, but Ross has some questions. Ross, this is an old one of Ross's, which I have avoided until now, so we could answer it in this time. Ross says, if you have a consultant appointed under XA, must you as the architect lower your fees then, or would you keep it the same on a project using fee based on a percentage of the project cost? That's Ross. I'll just give you an overview, Linda, and then we can address them one by one. The second question is, if the CPAP index values, XO and XE, for the glazing work group are not provided in the exam, are we expected to source them from Stats SA or maybe use assumed figures? And if so, will we still receive full marks? Okay, there's a little bit more to the question, but that's the gist of it. Ross says, mine is answered, thank you. Oh, thanks, Ross. Okay, cool. Chrissy Duplessis says, I would like to inquire regarding fee calculations. Would we be provided the IDOW schedules in the exam to assist? Given the complexity. I just want to answer that one quickly. Christy, there is no place on this earth where you should be expected to memorize an entire table unless you were doing like log 25 back in maths or something, right? Because you don't have to memorize, but you must know about complexities. And what you won't get is, I'm doing this building, which complexity is it related to? But the tables will be provided to you with the numbers, all right? So I'll answer that one. Christy, I hope that makes sense to you. And then, sorry, we have two more coming through, or one more coming through. John Morley says, would liability be to the architect and energy specialist if one was appointed, relating to this question here, Linda? But those are the overview of questions thus far. I'll check in the chats if there's any more information coming through. But Linda, you can go ahead with those questions. You have it available to you as well, I think.
Thanks, Akil. I think the first question, if I'm not mistaken, has already been answered, to say that anything or any work that is in reference to the national building regulations must be deemed as a minimum requirement. So that would fall within the ambit of standard services or package of standard services of an architect. So you're not charging over and above. There could be instances where the SANS 10400 per XA calculation is far more complex and far more extensive than in just a conventional building, for instance, right? Where you can actually sit down with the client and actually explain to them, to say, I need to go above and beyond the call of duty in terms of my work, in being able to actually comply with SANS 10400 Part XA, and then discuss as how the remuneration will work over and above the remuneration that you would have charged for a standard service. So I hope that answers your question. And typically, anything that requires of you to go over and above the call of duty you would charge on a time basis because it's more specialized and doesn't fall within the list of standard services. So I hope that answers your question. Yeah, I think the issue of which source documents to rely upon in the calculation of fees. I think first and foremost, obviously, there are fee scales that are actually published on an annual basis by SECAP. So I would say that's the most reliable to go to, even though we did emphasize that these are guidelines. In practice, you may, depending on the circumstances, you may be able to deviate from those. I mean, with government projects, for instance, you guys know there's the tendering system where it works on the 80-20, 90-10 sort of rule, where the bigger portion is price-based, meaning that the person that prices the lowest stands the highest chance of actually winning that tender. So I hope that question is answered. I think the third question about the calculations, I think Achilles tried to answer that one, so I won't deal with that. And then I think the last question was the aspect of liability in relation to this scenario that we've given. And yeah, I think it's a good question because I don't think it was sufficiently maybe dealt with. So let's think about the scenario. You as an architect designed this building from start to finish, right? Then because of the complexity of the building and the facade that you have actually chosen. Remember, first and foremost, the design intent, and I'm using this word design intent, falls under you as a principal agent, as an architect, as a designer. So what I'm saying here is that the facade engineer or thermal engineer, whatever you would have decided to use in this particular case, would not typically come to you and impose this kind of system or facade for this project. And in the first place, in the first instance, you as the architects are the one that actually decided we're going to use glass, right? Let's just keep that thought. You decided we're going to use glass as an architect. Then at a later stage, when you're doing the design coordination with the other disciplines, the facade expert or engineer then said, fine, okay, you want glass. We will give you this type of glass, either high performance glass or reflective glass, as we can see in this case. You willy-nilly approved without questioning his choice of glass, means that even if you are not equally liable for accepting that proposal or of that reflective glass facade, when it gets to the stage of litigation or lawsuit, you will have to shoulder some of the responsibility for the choices that you have made. In this particular case, we could argue that maybe it's a 20-80 split, where if you have been sued for 100,000, you'll be liable for paying the 20,000, and the facade engineer will be liable for paying the 80,000. Right. I hope that answers the question.
Linda, I think there's a couple more questions that are still coming through, but let's go to the chats. In the chats we had from Willem van der Westhuizen, he says the force majeure question is the CPAP calculation. The option A and option B that you pick in the JBCC contract data under 3.0 payment of preliminaries adjustment methods. I also don't know if that's a question, Willem, or if it's a statement, but you want to comment on that, Linda?
I'm trying to look at the question in my chats.
Willem, you want to go for it?
Yeah, there's a question. So under the previous question, the force majeure question, we have to calculate the amount payable. Is that the method you pick within the JBCC and then you use that method to calculate, or is there a different CPAP document that he, is, that he is referring to that we will use to calculate?
Oh, Willem, you want to go for it?
Yeah, there's a question. So under the previous question, the force majeure question, we have to calculate the amount payable. Is that the method you pick within the JBCC and then you use that method to calculate, or is there a different CPAP document that he is referring to that we will use to calculate?
Thank you for that question. So to answer your question quickly, the CPAP, that concept is found within the JBCC. But just note that the JBCC may not be updated as frequently as the CPAP document is published, right? Because Stats SA, together with the National Department of Public Works, are the ones responsible for gazetting and the revision of that document. And remember, Stats SA, if I'm not mistaken, they publish their results annually. Akil?
Yeah, I think you're correct, Nina. I think it's an annual publication.
Yes. So I would say the safest to answer your question is to refer to that CPAP, they call it CPAP provisions, that particular document. And like I said, it's easily available online, because if you're going to use CPAP and we are expecting you to do that calculation and you use a calculation or formula from 5 years ago, it means obviously ultimately your answer will not tally up with our answers. So it's important to check first and foremost which is the latest document that has been published by Stats SA. Hopefully I've answered that question.
But we are in the reading materials for the test that we're allowed to have in paper 2, that document is not mentioned. So are we now required to know that off by heart? Because I see your question, example question, counts 6 marks. So it's a quite lengthy calculation, it seems like.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. So Zama, I think Zama can take this question in terms of what's allowed in the exam in terms of documents and what isn't allowed. I think in the study guide it is clarified, but maybe Zama can assist further as to what is allowed and what is not allowed.
Yeah, but that document is not specifically there, the CPAP provisions.
Sorry, I think Willem, let me help clarify for you as well. And
Yeah.
what Zama has mentioned here a number of times is stuff available in the study list of materials. What we're providing for you is a context around which a question may be asked. Say that we have in the paper 2 exam a question that will make use of the word CPAP. If you have never dealt with it before, you will be lost on the question. The question might not be about CPAP. The question might actually be about something else. What we're trying to do is give you familiarity with the terms and understand what's happening. This is a research task, which means there's plenty of things that are not going to be in the exam from what we've mentioned. But we're explaining to you, how do you think about answering the questions? That's the core of the last 2 weeks workshops. I mentioned to you last week the youth webinar. I mentioned to you Money Matters documents. I mentioned to you Stefan Antony's podcast. None of that stuff will come out in the paper. But the things that they're talking about, pivoting business models, changing, those things are contextual things. What you are asking, Willem, is, will this document come out? No, that's not what we're saying. We're saying these are places that you need to be familiar with, because if a question like this comes out in the paper, what often happens is that people get confused and they think, do I need to know the document? When that's not what the question is asked. Today's whole session, Linda just explained, is there's so many things that you might be alluded to, but that's not what the question is asking. So, Willem, in summary of that answer, no, it's not that you must have the CPAP document in. You must understand that it's a method to solve the problems. Does that make sense to you, Willem?
Yes, thank you very much.
Okay, cool.
Yeah. Thank you very much, Akil.
We have a lot of questions actually coming through, Ralinda, so I'm just gonna run through them quickly.
No problem.
From Andre Olwachen and Milka, we have more questions on question 1.4. So one of them from Milka is, how does a PI respond in a case like this? Will it be treated as a delictual claim or contractual claim? And then Andre mentioned, being registered requires us to be considerate to the designers. I think you somewhat answered this, right? But I just want to make sure that we complete it. So Milka and Andre is the two questions. Milka's question is it a delictual claim or a contractual claim?
Okay. Yeah, to answer that question, I'm not sure if there's a difference between the two, a judicial or contractual claim. What I can tell you for sure is that in this particular case, the case is actually a contractual in nature, because remember, if the client is being sued, Milka, it means that over and above what they would have paid you, now they are liable for the monies for legal costs because of the lawsuit. So the client is not only going to be dealing with JSE across the road that's being affected, but they're also going to be dealing with what you call it, yourselves as professional. And in this particular case, we'll say, for example, it's the facade engineer and yourself as a principal agent. So again, I think try and avoid terminology, for instance, like a judicial process, that term that you've used, that is found in the mainstream
No,
legal.
Linda, she said delictual, delict, not
or delict.
delict, yeah, delictual.
Oh, yes. Yes. Oh, okay. Sorry. I thought it was
my pronunciation,
yeah.
sorry. Yeah, delict.
Yeah. So again, I'm not a legal expert, but what I can tell you for sure, this is a contractual dispute between De Beers and yourselves as the principal agent and facade engineer. Then between the client and the JSE, maybe that's where delict comes in, right? Because that's another process altogether. Beyond that, I'm not sure if I can answer the question more adequately, but yeah, I hope that clarifies, answers your question to some extent. I don't know if Akil, you've got a different answer.
No,
Perhaps
we got about 15 minutes left, Linda. So I think at this stage, from the questions, we've covered most of them. And I think for maybe in the last 5 minutes or so, Zama should take some more questions related to administrative side. But I think what'll be of benefit to the candidates now is for Linda, yourself and myself, just to give them a little bit of an overview and clear up some maybe concerns they might have relating to the exam. So I'm gonna go with this very quickly. Linda, you and I have served on this exam advisory committee and been participated in the process of constructing the paper over the last couple of years or so, right? And from what we got from it is that candidates, often the case is, one, are afraid of the exam, and maybe there's a lot of stakes behind it. And so the sort of people otherwise that are competent fail the exam. And secondly, the problem that you and I were trying to resolve over the last 2 weeks was that candidates have a lot of information, but it's somewhat not clear to them what is being asked in the question. And that's a skill that you have to develop. You have to look at the question and be able to look at the keywords and look at what is really being asked. Because many of the time, what people feel is that it's a question of competence. It's not a question of competence. We're not asking you, are you able to competently design this building? We're asking you, perhaps more clearly, is are you able to be compliant in the way you answer the questions? Can you comply to contractual law? Can you comply to the code of conduct? Can you comply to the APA? That's the Architectural Professionals Act, if anyone didn't know. Can you comply to those things? And that's the part where you have to reframe. When you are getting too deep into the question, you can't go and be like, there's so many variables. There's variables for everything in life. You can question the foundation of anything. You can question the foundation of your marriage. You can question the foundation of the institutions you come from. Don't go into that dark hole. Like it's a thing that's being asked, and maybe it's a difficult question, but not something to lose your mind over. Linda, I don't know. You and I were discussing this yesterday as well. So, what's your thoughts around that?
No, you completely spot on, Akil. So what we've also tried to do, especially like with these 2 slides that we projected, is the fact that the thing is with sometimes the perception in terms of the paper, the exam, is that what you're only being tested on is your knowledge on office practice, your knowledge on compliance aspects, and things like that, right? And things that are more administrative in nature, let's put it that way. But what we're trying to get at with this, with these examples, is to say, we're not going to say sit in front of a computer and do a window detail, for instance. But what we're saying is we want you to transport all of that knowledge and put it in a legal contractual context and test your ability to actually then fuse the two elements together. All right. So you're not completely divorced from the technical elements. It's fused into this paper. Although I think by and large, some of it will be mainly administrative and less technical and things like that. And I think maybe that relates, Akhil, to even the question that I'm seeing on the chats, where it says in relation to question 1.4, could liability extend to the local authority for approving the BDM application? I think that's a very important question, right? Especially when there's a dispute and the client is coming after you and you want to blame all and sundry except yourself, because now there's a financial implication for you. Just to help you with this question. So part of what the Department of Public Works does as the custodian of the built environment. Remember, we are also the governing body for all legislation related to infrastructure, right? All the regulatory bodies report to us and whatnot. But part of what we do is check for compliance for projects that our consultants in the private sector are working on. And that's partly what I do on a day-to-day basis. So sometimes there could possibly be an oversight on my part where, like in this example, the architect has specified glass and then the facade engineer has gone on to give the detailed specifics and the the type of glass to be used. And I don't see it as a problem at the time of approving, the submission. Unfortunately, currently, both in terms of municipality and public works, there is a clause or disclaimer that absolves us as professionals working in those government departments. And it places full liability for any mistakes on the consultants. We can argue that it's not fair, but just bear that in mind. And that's why it's very important that you are very conversant when it comes to compliance and all the technical elements, in a project. So to answer your question, no. If a building control officer or inspector makes an oversight, unfortunately, there's legislation that absolves them. It's an argument for another day whether it's fair or not. But obviously they do their best to exercise oversight, but liability still rests with you entirely. Thank you.
Nina, you from everything you mentioned today, I think it was exceptionally valuable for a number of reasons. There are some people that probably would not have followed, right? And been like, what is going on? And it's so much information. And then you get a school of person who is like, oh, man, I had these questions and now they're answered. And then you have someone that is saying, oh, you know what, just information overload. Whoever you are, whatever your disposition is, whatever your view on it is, what Linda has discussed in today's session is very much related to the construction process and the documentation, the legal frameworks, the legislation, and the contracts around it. Remember, the construction process, as it occurs, is a form of reality, right? It's something that exists. How do we document that reality? We have it documented through drawings or whatever the case is. But how do we manage the actions and behaviors of people? That's where contracts come in, right? Because contracts will come and attempt to govern how we interact with each other. And that's what is being spoken about. How do we govern those things? So everything Lina mentioned today, especially from his experience as a chief architect at the Department of Public Works, has come from a perspective that is, of course, different to what I mentioned last week, where my discussions were based on the infrastructure of the field. Like, okay, infrastructurally, we don't have enough stuff that allows us to make money. But in the architect guidelines that were discussed this week spoke about various ways to practice and how you can make money from that practice. And I also spoke about the advent of emerging technologies. I spoke about things at an infrastructural level that affects the profession. What Linda spoke about today is about the realities of daily life on site. and how contracts and admin relates to that. These are two things that the exam is testing. And so you guys know as well, remember it's called the professional practice exam, not professional design exam. The word professional means you are governed by a profession which comes from law, legal frameworks. So we are testing you in terms of legal frameworks. We're not testing you in terms of your competence to design a building. If that was the exam, it would be a very different exam. And that's where many people are confused, right? Before closing out from yourself and myself, Linda, I just want to share my screen. I'm going to share my screen quickly, Linda, if that's fine with you.
No problem.
Sorry,
what
Akil,
I'm
can I
showing-
just ask something quick?
Oh, of course. Hey, Ross, go for it. Go for it while I'm getting my screen ready.
So it just goes back to question 1.4. So
Yeah.
if the examiners had an answer that it was one of the professionals that was liable, but you answered in, I as a professional advise the client that this could be an issue without knowing what the other building's design is. You notified him in writing. He replied and said, I don't care. I want the reflected glass. So you've stuck to your code of conduct by notifying the client of a potential risk in writing, and he disregarded it. Will the examiners see that as you've shown a different way to answer it? You've justified it through the code of conduct that you are governed by. Would that then get you the 4 marks then?
I'm going to help on that one, Linda, before you also mentioned.
No problem.
Just to give
Yeah.
direction, Ross, what you've done is you've added a new layer of complexity that wasn't evident in the question. So that means you're bringing into something that is not asking that something new, because you're trying to reason by adding new information. So Ross, what I'm sort of suggesting to you is you must stay away from that, because the question is telling you already very evidently what they want you to talk about. They don't want you to speculate on what potentially could or could not have happened. Does that make sense, Ross?
Okay. I just thought that the new papers were going to be written in a way that wants to see your thinking. So that's why I just wanted to ask that question. But no, it's cool. I understand.
Okay, Ross, you're right. They do want to see the thinking, right? But if your thinking is going to add something new to the question, then that means you're not doing thinking, you are speculating. The thinking is now based on the scenario that's been set. But Linda, you're welcome to add to that.
Yeah. No, I completely agree, Akil. I think what Willem maybe has tried to do is throw in a different scenario to the scenario that we've already provided. And I think that could complicate things for you because you're not answering based on all the information that is provided in the question. So like Akil said, try and avoid creating other scenarios within a particular question and stick to the wording and the context that we have created in this particular case. So in this particular case, if we had said, for example, you had insisted to the electrical engineer that reflective glass is not a good idea for whatever reason, and you've also insisted to the client that in as much as you want something that looks like a diamond shape and finish, that is going to become a problem. And you have, and they still forced you to proceed and go ahead with that. Firstly, it might be violating your code of ethics. And when we talk about ethics, that's exactly what it means. That there are certain things that as a professional, you may need to walk away from. But if you had to do it through their insistence and it's in writing, then it doesn't, the answer that we've given does not apply in this scenario, because in that particular case, one could argue that you've absolved yourself of any liability. But the question, this particular question in this context, the way it's been positioned is to say that you actually overlooked this oversight, and therefore, as a result, you partly are responsible, for example, for 20% of the liability, or the 20,000, as I cited as an example. So hopefully that answers your questions.
Just to add to that as well, Linda, to make it clear for Ross, if the paper then said in the next question that you did your due diligence and this still happened, then they are telling you definitively, right, now respond based on this. So you have to wait for the paper to say that. Like, I don't think the expectation is that you read deep. You must also understand, Ross, that and just as you mentioned, it's a very difficult thing to assess someone's thinking if you are going to consider every single factor that's occurred. Because now what you're doing is you're giving too much of things for a person to compute in their mind. So the questions are actually pretty straightforward. What happens is the depth that candidates read to it is proportional to their level of experience. But here's the thing.
Yeah.
Don't let experience override what's being asked. Someone might ask you, what do you think is architecture? And you have many opinions. But think about the observer that's asking you. They are asking you for a specific means. If you have a child asking you what's architecture, you give a very different response to someone who might be trying to figure out how to study in the field. Different answers. So the examiner is looking to test compliance. They're not looking to test, do you know every scenario that's ever occurred and what's the right thing to do in a specific situation? But Ross, I think I spent a lot of time answering that, and specifically, Ross, because many people have the question. In fact, when I wrote the exam, that was one of my primary concerns as well. Where do I draw the line on how to answer it? But Ross, hopefully that gives you enough context. I think,
Thank you.
Ross, it hopefully makes sense. Guys, just to show you before we conclude, because we are now reaching that mark, and that means time will go slightly above for Zama to answer his questions. But if you look on the top right corner on SACAP's page, if you go to publications and in documents, you will see a number of things that will help you, specifically the study guide that's been around. And additionally to that, if you go onto SACAP's page and you go to the video section, and if you go to popular ones, you'll start to see our professional practice webinars that have been here. They are amongst the more popular videos that are around, so you'll find it quite quickly. But there are 4. So it's this one from a year ago, 2, and then you'll see 3, and another one, I don't know, you'll see it with my face here somewhere, 4. There's it, right? Those 4 videos are part of the comprehensive set of lectures Linda, myself, and the team worked on to help give you lectures to better contextualize things. So these are the 2 things that we suggest you go through urgently so that you'll put yourself in good stead to prepare for the exam. That's a SACAP guideline and watching these lectures. But I think that's enough speaking from me. Linda, it's back to you and Zama. That's all from me today.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's very well put, Akil. I think Zama maybe can assist with regards to what documents will be allowed into the exam and which ones will not, so that at least candidates can actually then know what documents to focus on that they will not be bringing in, but to try and acquaint themselves with the literature in those particular documents, if those documents will not be allowed. Not to say that the documents that are going to be allowed, you must not be conversant with the content. You still must be. But I would also be more concerned about the documents that cannot be brought in. Having said that, I think Zama maybe can explain as well. After the presentation from last Saturday by Akil and today's presentation, considering that the paper has in all likelihood been set, is the paper cast in stone, or will there be some panel beating or tailoring of the paper to accommodate some of the things that were in the last 2 presentations that were perhaps not included in the paper? And I think that's the second one. So it's the issue of which documents are allowed, and then secondly, can the paper be slightly adjusted based on the last 2 presentations? Thank you. I hope Zama's still on.
Thank you, Felix. Just for me to say, maybe just regarding the paper or on the open book, which is paper 2. What's allowed is all the list of study material which is listed on the list of study materials on the website. You can print out all the study materials that's listed, or just to be sure. It should be study material that's listed on the website. Any other maybe additional information that's not on the website, that's not allowed. but all the information that's listed on the material, all the study material documentation, and all of them, that's prescribed. That you can print and you can bring in to your open book, which is paper 2. Just again to emphasize on that, you can bring a laptop, né? But the laptop for you, the only use for the laptop is one, for the exam, where you'll be writing your exam. And two, maybe let's say you have an additional laptop. The other laptop is just for the monitoring. You are using it as a camera, not for maybe referring to it for studying, or you have maybe soft copies on it, maybe to browse through. That's not allowed because in the past, SACAP has then identified that some of the candidates are using that maybe second laptop to access the internet, and maybe other, maybe say we have the AI nowadays to ask questions through the second laptop. That's why now SACAP said no, you're not allowed to use the second laptop for maybe using the materials. That's why now you have to print the materials that's listed on the website, and then bring them in paper 2 on the open book. You can make notes on those study materials, given that maybe you are summarizing and making extra notes on it. But for extra maybe notes, saying maybe you are making notes on or on a different or additional notebook, the notebook is not allowed. If you're going to make maybe extra notes, you can make them on the printed study materials. You can highlight just for understanding, because you understand maybe as you go through your studying, you will make maybe highlights just for your remembrance. And then maybe you end up making highlights on the study material. You can bring those on paper 2. But paper 1, you're not allowed to bring any of those. It's just you, your laptop, and then maybe a blank page, like in a normal traditional exam. We are allowed to bring a blank note, maybe to make notes or make calculations. That's still allowed. Just and again, I know some of the candidates haven't received their invoices for the exam. Don't stress much. If you are here on the exam, that means you are eligible to write the exam, and then you will be accommodated. You will write the exam. You will be given the time, and I know we have set maybe dates for preliminary applications. It was for 15. I was talking to Mr. Munetsi just to understand and find out if extensions can be given. And extensions are given. If you are late maybe on payment, you can still make preliminary maybe application and pay now or maybe next week. I'm not sure like as to maybe the date, but for now, candidates are given that allowance to make applications and pay just before the exam for the exams. Either is the 39, or because now it has changed. It's no longer 390. It's 417 because of the financial year. Fees change every financial year. Now it was 390 for 2025, 2026. Now for 2026, 2027, it's 417 for the preliminary fee. And then for the actual exam is 3,107. All those fees, you can find them on our website. If you go to the website and you check under fees, when you go to the website, you go to register with SACAP and you check on SACAP fees. The first one there at the top is the latest SACAP fees. You can find them there. They are all in there. If you are late on maybe your application, but for those who've applied before April, before we went to the new financial year, they will be liable to pay the 417, and then the 3,170 for the new fees. But for those who applied before April, before we went to the financial year, will be paying the 390 and the 2,377. Even if you pay this following week, if you applied in March and prior March, you'll be paying the 2,377. But if you made your application in April and you've paid the admin fee or preliminary fee of 470, and you're going to pay now the 3,117. And then I was talking to Mr. Munetsi this week because I was doing an accreditation meeting with one of the ALS. One of the question was because we candidates and apprentices, because normally apprentice and then candidate architecture draft person, they are required to write paper one. But now the policy will change that they are all required to write both papers, which is paper one and paper two. Either you are an apprentice or a candidate architect to a candidate architectural technologist, a candidate senior architectural technologist to a candidate architect. You'll be required to now to write both papers. Because I get lots of inquiries about that. Because they need to know candidates whether if you write, maybe let's say now you are a candidate architectural, maybe technologist, and then you continue with your studies, and then maybe you get maybe a master's. You don't need to go back again, maybe to be a candidate. Let's say you've written and passed the PPE and then you upgraded to a professional. You don't need again maybe to be a candidate, maybe architect to then become a professional architect. If you have written and passed the PPE, you are done. And in the near future, if you like to upgrade, we upgrade you based on the qualification. Extensions are given for the exam. If you have applied, you will be given the chance to write the exam. If there are any questions just based around the logistics on that, on applications or writing the exam, we can take a few heads. Willem?
Good day, Zama. I don't have a question on the application, but I have a question on the day of the exam. By when will we be receiving the link? And I see in some of the previous year seminars, they mentioned that you'll get the time to familiarize yourself with the system, like a mock exam, basically. Do we get a chance like that again, so we can see if the link works and all of those things?
Yes, yes. Thank you, Willem. I will be sending because now I'm just going through all applications, ne? Just to get all applications. So when I send links or any information that all candidates who will be writing the exam, they get them. I will be sending them because now I was processing like this week. I was processing some of the applications just to make sure everyone is accommodated. Uh, they can also attend the webinars. I'll be sharing the link for because this one the link for the monitoring camera. I'll be sharing it either on the first week of May, so you all have it. But the link to exam nets, that one we share it on the date of the exam. They will be different for paper one and paper two. But we also share a demo link. I will share a demo link for ExamNet. we have is a dummy, or it's just a question paper just to go through so you understand like the rules of the exam. Like once you are logged in on ExamNets, you're not allowed to go anywhere. If you maybe go, like example, let's say you are logged in on ExamNets and maybe you want to, because if you, whenever you leave the site and you leave it unattended, maybe for a minute or two, okay, just to be maybe straight with it. If you leave the exam maybe for 5 minutes, it will log you off the system. So you must be constantly on it. So if maybe you leave for 5 minutes, it will log you out. So I will share it the just for practice an exam.net link for practicing. We have a question paper there for you to practice. And then the monitoring camera, I will share it with you I think first week of May. So you all have it in time. I will take another hand. Are you fine, Willem?
Yeah, so just so I understand, there's two different links. The one is for the exam, and then the one is for the monitoring camera.
Yes. The one you're going to get first is for the monitoring camera. That one will
And
come as soon as I have everyone who's going to write the exam. As soon as I
and
have the total number, I will then share the monitoring camera link. And then the
okay, and that
exam.net link, you will get it on the date of the exam.
so I have an external camera that I plug into my laptop. That link will work then if it's the one device. It won't give issues.
What camera is it? Is it a web camera?
Yeah, it's like a Logitech web camera. It's an external camera. You plug in the USB.
Yeah, but the because the main purpose of it should be monitoring the space. If you're
Yeah,
going
that's
to
why I
plug
have
it
it there.
maybe in your computer, and then it monitors the space in of your laptop and yourself and the desk, that we get to see that you don't have any extra notes, or you don't have anything written in your desk or anything. So if you have it, it's fine, but it should
Yeah,
show the
but if
space
you,
of your desktop.
so the links, if you do the exam link and the camera link on one device, it won't kick you out. It will be fine.
No, it won't. It
Okay.
works like the same as a web camera. A web camera, you can plug it in your computer or your laptop, but
Yeah.
it does a different purpose.
Okay. Thank you.
Zama, I have got a question for you. Could you maybe just run us through like the basic rundown on how the day will work? Like what software? Do we have to declare our papers and show on the screen like this is what I've brought into the paper? And then another thing is, what is the story with cellular devices? Like, can you have your phone on the desk? No phones around? Yeah, that's just my few questions.
Okay, thank you, Paige. If you go through the SACA PPE rules and regulation, it will tell you all of that. But just to run you through it, your cell phone, you can only have a cell phone if you are using it for monitoring camera. But just to keep it on your desk, no, it's not allowed. No? You can have it if you are using it as a source of camera. And then you must bring your IDs just to confirm that, okay, this is Paige Maybeck. I am Paige, and this is the information I have on my desk. But don't worry much about it, because on the date of the exam, we will be able to see all the spaces around you, and we will be telling you. But just make sure you don't bring any, like, just to be sure, on your paper one, your desk should be clear. If you have any resources, it should be just a blank paper and your calculator. But any other notes, maybe your phone or yourself, any other thing is not allowed. Your desk should be clear. Are
Hi,
you fine,
Zama.
Paige?
Yes,
Yes.
thank you so much.
Janet, you can come through.
Okay, thanks. I think you mentioned the calculator then. So can we not use the calculator on our phone or the laptop that we're using for the exam?
No,
It has
you
to be
can
a,
use you can use your the laptop, the calculator, but no, the only calculator you can use, because we will never be sure, Janet, on if you are using maybe whether you are using your phone for maybe using your calculator, or you are just going through it for any other thing, because we won't see the content on the phone. We'll be seeing you pressing it, but we won't know what you are really going through. So just to be safe, please bring a calculator.
okay. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Sorry, one thing that's
Yeah.
really bothering me is what if you need to go to the toilet during the exam?
No, it's fine. We have a chat box there. If you're going to maybe to use a restroom, you write on the chat box to say, okay, I'm going for maybe a break, or I'm going to pee, or you
Yeah.
understand.
Okay,
We
but
have it there. So
but if
if ever the system maybe locks you out, if you've
Yeah.
reported on the chat room to say, okay, I'm going maybe to the restroom, we will then lock you back again.
All right. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Janet.
Zama,
Yes.
I just wanted to ask in terms of materials, if you have a hard copy book of the JBCC contract, it's a book. So are you allowed to bring that, or you just need printed materials?
But just make sure, is it Kulegan?
Yes.
The materials that you should bring, Kulegan, should be on the list of study materials. Now, the JPCC, I know there are two JPCC contracts there. There's one that's blank and there's one that's filled in. The one that's filled in, you're not allowed to bring it. We will, because for those who write the PPE in SACAP, we do share with them the blank one, JPCC. You can bring the blank JPCC
No,
because it's listed
yeah, it's a
on
book
the
that
material.
explains the JBCC that they made us buy.
No,
Is that
Kulu, I don't
allowed?
think. I know the book that we bought in third year. I don't think it's allowed because it's not.
Okay.
No, it's not.
Yeah, no.
Yeah, it's not listed, the Kulegani. Just to be sure, Kulegani, make sure that or whatever material that you bring in is listed on the list of study materials.
Okay, no, noted.
Thanks, man.
Thank you.
Anyone else maybe with the question in regards to the PPE? Are we all fine now? But if
Zama,
you have any, yes, man.
Yeah. So sorry, Zama. I'm not sure if maybe it's clear for the candidates. Will any clarity-seeking questions be allowed during the exams?
Yeah. It is allowed because
Yeah. Okay.
if you remember, Felix, we have the chat box. Yeah. If
Yeah.
ever
Yeah.
during the exam maybe you need to ask anything, maybe there's
Yeah.
some clarity you need, you can either raise a
Yes.
hand like we are doing now, or you can just pose your question in the chat box. We are always there to attend to it.
All right. All right. And then just the last one for me, Zama. The links to of the presentations, the two
Yeah.
presentations, those will be shared, right?
Yeah, because the one for last week I've already shared them with the candidates, and this one I will share
Okay.
with maybe this one because the recording
Yeah.
we'll share it on Tuesday because Monday is a holiday. But
Okay.
the study, like the presentation, if you can send it to me after the presentation, then I will share with the candidates.
Not a problem. I'll send the link even now.
Yeah.
so that at least you have it at hand.
Nah, no worries, Felix. I will share it with them. I'm always sharing. It's a good thing to share.
Yes.
Now, if we don't have any other hands,
I have a question.
yeah,
Sorry, just to go back to calculators, are we
yeah.
allowed to use the calculators on the device we write an exam on, or do you have to
No.
have a separate calculator?
Yes, you should have a separate calculator because the laptop or whatever is a computer you'll be using that day. Yeah? It won't allow you to go to any other page except for the exam.net link. If you go out of it, it will log you off the system. So you need to bring your calculator. You can't use the one that's on the system, either is on your laptop or your desktop computer.
Okay, thank you.
Hi, Zama.
Hi, how are you, Belinda?
Well, thanks. Just a question with regards to notes. I don't know if it was answered already. Can I have notes on the blank side of my study material?
On the study material.
Yes, so I printed my study material, but it's not back to back. So I have blank pages on it. Am I allowed to write notes?
Yeah.
Okay.
If it's on the study material, you
Yes,
can
it's
do.
on the study material,
What's
but
not
on the back
allowed?
side.
What's not allowed, Belinda, is for you maybe to have maybe your notebook and then bring the notebook. The notebook is not allowed.
Okay.
If you're going to make maybe notes, because I believe the ones that you'll be making maybe on, because you're saying it's not printed on a back to back. It's a one
Yes.
page, then it's a blank page, or a page and a blank page. You can make notes on it
Yes.
because we believe
Yes.
that maybe you are summarizing maybe some of the information that's on the
Yes.
study material.
Yes.
There, yes, then you can bring that on paper
All
too.
right. All right. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Belinda.
Oh, sorry. One more question. Is there a
Yep.
time limit to how long we can go to the bathroom?
No, not really. The
Oh, okay.
important thing is for you to to write on the chat box.
On the
If
chat
maybe you're
box.
going to go out, so we know,
Okay.
okay, Belinda just went out. So when you
Okay.
come back, maybe the system has logged you out. Then you come in, and then we know, okay, we need to let Belinda in now.
All right.
Yeah.
Thank
Kulegan.
you.
Quick
Thanks,
question
Belinda.
again.
Yes,
Hello?
Kulegan.
Yes, quick question. So I just want to ask, so let's say when what happens when you're done writing? Do you wait until the 3 hour period has elapsed, or do you communicate?
Now it's fine because when you are done, the exam net you can submit. Ne? Then it's fine. After you've submitted, then you write, you say, okay, I'm done. Then you are done.
Okay.
You don't have to stay for the whole 3 hours. If you are done, then you are done.
And
Because
lastly,
sometimes, sometimes because the exam is 3 hours, there might be extension, né? Maybe a 30 minutes or 15 minutes given to what Mr. Monete will give. Maybe he will give you 15 minutes extension after the 3 hours, or 30 minutes or an hour. Né? But whenever that time ends, né, the extension, uh, let's say you still not done, but your time is passed. You won't lose your exam. It will automatically submit it. We will have it even if you were not done, but it will automatically submit. Maybe you are still on maybe question 5, but you have to complete maybe until question maybe 7. But if maybe your time passed, but you were not through with the whole paper, it will automatically submit it. So even if you're not done, the ones that you've already done, we will have it.
okay, noted. Then my last question is, do you know what time this exam will actually start?
Yes. Okay, just to announce again. The exam will start from 9 o'clock because it's a 3 hour paper. Then it's 9, 10, 11. And then from 11, you will get an extension. Either it will be 15 or 30 minutes.
Okay,
9
9
till
o'clock in the morning. Yes. Okay, thank
Yeah,
you.
9 o'clock in the morning.
9 till 12.
9 until is 9, 10, 11. 3 hour paper each.
9 till 11 is 2 hours. 9 till 12 is 3 hours.
Now, if you count from, oh, yeah, yeah. Oh, thanks, my man. Then it's 9, it's 10, 11, 12. But it's a 3 hour paper. At least we
Zama,
are clear with that. Yes?
how long does it take to get results back after the paper?
Okay, that one will depend again on the examiners because after that, but it won't take time. I'll make sure of it. Let's hope all our markers are in good health, né? Because just after you are done, the following day, I will be dividing the papers and sending them to the markers. So you'll get it maybe the following month. Let's say it's the 15th, and then by the 15th of the following month, you should have your papers because uh there's also a remark and then there's moderation just to make sure that you are not robbed of anything. So that's why maybe the process will take a bit of a time. It will take maybe 30 days, then you will have it.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Okay, I think we are fine now, colleagues. I'll be sharing the presentation that was used today, and I'll be sharing the recording on Tuesday. And if there's any other question, maybe clarity you need, please send me an email. I'll be attending to those from next week. Colleagues.
Hi, Zama.
Yes, sir.
While we're writing our exams, are we allowed to read the questions out to ourselves for clarity, just in case there's some form of ambiguity?
You mean reading it out loud?
Yeah, so like we can read question 1 to ourselves to make sure that we understand what we are reading correctly.
No, it's fine because that's a way of doing things, right? If maybe you want to read something, you can, because the important part there is that we monitor your space. Yeah? You will be on mute. We will mute you so you don't disturb the other maybe candidates who will be writing. So you can read them out loud. Just maybe if that's your way of maybe understanding things. So that is fine. You will be on mute until maybe you need to ask anything.
Okay, great. Thanks, Zama.
Thank you.
Hi,
Hello,
there's
Zam.
someone that the chat
Uh,
if a person will have to write paper 2 as well.
Hi, Kayla.
Hi. There's someone that asked a question in the chat about if a drafts person will have to write paper 2 as well. They don't have a mic.
Okay. You know what I can say now, Kayla, just to advise, ne? Because it will change. I think now, if you can, as an apprentice or a draft person, you can write both papers, ne? Because the policy, like I was in a meeting with Mr. Monitsi just this week. He's saying that okay, because even apprentices and candidates, when they upgrade, they become professionals, and then they need to do some of the things which is on paper too, which is more on the practice, and then because now candidates are only required to write paper 1, né? And then paper 2, they were not allowed to do it. But as the policy will change, be compulsory for everyone to write both papers. So I think now, because for candidates and for candidates, architecture, draft person, and apprentice, you only need paper one for you to upgrade. Yeah, you don't need paper two. Paper two is only required for a technologist, a senior, and then a candidate architect. My advice will be write both papers. Write both papers. So even if it, because maybe in the near future you will want to upgrade maybe to a technologist, you will have to write again paper two in order for you to upgrade to a technologist or a senior or a professional architect. I will advise that if you can, if you feel that you are up to it, you can write both papers. Are you fine, Kayla?
Yes, perfect. Thank you. The question wasn't for me, it was just in the chat, but I'm sure it's fine. Thanks.
Thank you, Kayla. Okay, thank you, colleagues. If I can get a word from my panelist guys, there. Akil, are you still here, my brother?
Akil, I think, had to leave, Zama.
Yeah.
I think he did,
Okay.
yeah, mention on the chat. But yeah, I've got nothing much to add, Zama. But I did ask, I think, a question around if the paper is cast in stone based on the inputs we've had from the candidates and also based on the last two presentations. Other than that, I would like to wish everyone all of the best for the exam. And yeah, just do your parts and you should be fine. Thank you.
No, thank you, Felix. Just on that question, whether the paper is based on the two presentations. The presentation you've done, guys, is perfect, ne? Just for my understanding and knowledge, because you both two guys are the professionals, and you've given your insight and your experience. And I think you were giving the insight based on the experience and understanding and your history on it. It will come in handy. It won't change. It won't change. The structure, and the understanding of the paper. It won't change. Because what changes most of the time is just maybe the pose of the question. But what's needed either on paper one or on paper two is always the same, and you've covered that. You did cover it, and now I'll be sharing the presentation and the recording so that the candidates will go through and understand it. Because you know what we did now, Mr. Felix, because in the past we were not allowed to share the past 2 years exams. But now I think we were given like an extension, because now we even send now 2024, 2025 papers and the memos are on the website. So I think for now going forward, candidates will be having more information just to go through the exam. So I think now it's much better than the other years.
Yeah. No, thank you, Zam.
Thank you, Mr. Felix, and thank you to the candidates. For any other questions and candidates, please write me an email. I'll be attending to them. And then if there's anything, I'll be consulting with Mr. Felix and Akil, and we will try and assist you to our best abilities. Okay, thank you, colleagues. Let's have a good long weekend, and then we will meet again. Maybe let's say next week through emails, and we will meet on the exam date on the 13 and 14. And the exam is 3 hours. It's from 9 and until 12, and there will be maybe extension given to that time. But until we meet, if there's anything you need, please write me an email or you can call, and I will be there to assist. Thank you, colleagues.
Thank you, Zama.
Thank you.
Zama, you mentioned 13th and 14th, isn't it the 14th and 15th?
No, it's 13 and 14.
Okay.
Yes. So